unophela going forward. For my business to grow and then employ and empower other South Africans so that sibe into one.
Limpopo Premier Dr. Phophi Ramathuba says the provincial government has convened a meeting with 10 water authorities to address water challenges in the province. Ramathuba says the aim is to solve the regression in water provision that has been recorded in the past few years. She says government recognizes that water provision is a basic service that must be provided to residents.
To date, the Premier's water war rooms for Polokwane municipality, for Mopani, the Greater Tzaneen, and also for Vhembe, focusing on Makhado municipality, have been established. This initiative is crucial in addressing the regression in water provision across our province. Access to clean and reliable water is not just a basic need. It is essential for public health, for economic growth, for environmental sustainability, and social equity.
And finally, further afield, the UN's World Food Programme says the United States has advised it of its intention to end emergency food assistance funding to 14 countries. The WFP has expressed its concern, saying this could amount to a death sentence for millions facing extreme hunger and starvation. Aid sources say the countries affected include Afghanistan, Yemen, Somalia, and Syria. The top story this hour, ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula says the party has not taken a decision on the future participation of the DA in Government of National Unity. This after DA, which is the ANC's biggest GNU partner, did not vote to support the fiscal policy framework last week. I'll have your headlines at 3:30. For SFM News, I'm Kolofelo Defo.
What? Don't wake up to less money or no money in your account. Add an extra layer of security for unusual transactions. Nominate a trusted person on the Standard Bank banking app. If something seems off, they can decline transactions for you, even while you sleep. Get trusted person on your banking app today. Visit our help center on the banking app to learn more. Another lesson to #BeatTheScam. Standard Bank is an authorized FSP and registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
Get tested this April at Specsavers and we'll give you a free optical frame up to the value of 1,000 Rand. That's right, get a free frame up to the value of 1,000 Rand when you purchase a comprehensive eye examination at Specsavers. Book online at specsavers.co.za or visit your nearest store nationwide. Early detection is key. Get tested today. Specsavers, for affordable eye care and a whole lot more. T's and C's apply.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
I wonder what you think about this. I was driving to work just now and passed Barry Hertzog Avenue in the Joburg's northern suburbs, right? And that just got me thinking that actually, who is Barry Hertzog? I mean, the street's named after him. Who is Barry Hertzog? And that got me thinking about, and that's not to be confused with Albert Hertzog, by the way, but that got me thinking about other streets, like, there's Dabal Drive in Cape Town, and, many other streets have had their names changed. For example, historically, Joburg's the main street in Joburg used to be Elof Street a long, long time ago. It's not the case any longer, but it certainly got me thinking about, one, how much do we know of the streets and the streets names that we drive on every single day? Like, do we really know those street names? Do we know these people that they're named after? Inevitably, they would be named after people of significance at that time, right? So how much effort do we make to really know who they are? Or do we not know them at all? I mean, can you maybe give me examples of where you are in your big city, whether it's Durban or Durbanville, wherever you are in the country, your dorpie perhaps, and there are streets that you drive on every single day, renamed streets over the years, and actually you have no idea who those people are. Just don't tell me Nelson Mandela Drive and you don't know who that is, okay? But I mean, you get my point. I certainly want to know whether you've had the similar experience as me. In some cases, you know it all, but in other cases you plead ignorance because you just don't know. I tell you what, let's get to the biggest issue, certainly of the day. It's been the biggest issue of the month, right? The issue of the budget and VAT, and linked to all of that has got to be the issue of the GNU and where we sit with that. Now, there's been development. There's been a presser today, certainly from Build One South Africa, and there's also been one from the ANC. There's been a statement issued by the Action SA. There's also been a statement issued by the DA, which all tells you that there's a hot potato here, and each party is sort of trying to push to a position of acceptance. So let's find out then regarding the ANC position on this issue with the ANC's national spokesperson, Mahlengi Bengu Motsiri. Appreciate your time as always. Thanks for connecting on the National Pulse.
Thanks, Ashraf. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now, I've noticed amongst the many, many things that your Secretary General, Fikile Mbalula, said, the one that stood out for me is he made the point, we are looking to do a reset button on the GNU. What does that mean, so that I don't misinterpret that?
Well, to fix the GNU such that it becomes a rules-based government of national unity led by the ANC, to ensure that we address in the future no other party, including the ANC itself, conducts itself in a manner in which the Democratic Alliance has been conducting itself in Parliament and in the executive, to an extent of having ministers and deputy ministers from the DA participating in a trip to the U.S. without the permission of the president on the pretext that they are going on special leave, and only to find that they are going there to undermine the sovereignty of South Africa in their engagements with stakeholders, different stakeholders in the U.S. A minister that refuses to go to the signing of a Bella Act, Minister Siviwe Khwarube, and absolutely no consequences for that kind of action, which effectively even undermines the head of state.
Well, I mean, all those things, and that initial meeting of the Bella Act, that happened a long, long time ago. And I remember speaking to someone, I'm trying to think, it was probably Geraldine Fraser-Moleketi, by the way, and she said, how can that ever be acceptable? That's just going back a few months, right? But fine, let's stay with where we are. I mean, I understand that, certainly from your side, as an ANC perspective, again, Fikile Mbalula making the point that the DA has undermined the unity of the GNU. Do you stick by that position?
We certainly stick by that position. And the National Working Committee of the ANC at yesterday's meeting took a very strong and a keen view about the conduct of the Democratic Alliance. That's one of the elephants in the room that the DA needs to communicate in terms of the upcoming negotiations with the ANC, how they aim to stay in the government of national unity, how they aim to curb the conduct in which the DA has been practicing, calling itself the DA ministers and not ministers who are serving South Africans. It is the incumbent on the DA. They are the ones who went and voted for a fiscal framework in a government, in an executive where they serve. It is the DA that must really explain itself in terms of how it proceeds from now, seeing the fact that they've litigated against this fiscal framework, seeing as they now, should this be passed, the division of revenue and the appropriations bill, should that be passed, it means if they elect to stay in the government of national unity, they are going to be effectively implementing a budget that they've litigated against. I do think that really the corner of the DA is the one where, most of these questions should be directed at them. All that is said as the ANC, we stand committed to the government of national unity, and we are going to make sure that there's consensus among parties, so in the national interest, as well as to ensure that there is governance stability in South Africa.
All right, but when you say you stand committed to the government of national unity, let's then talk about, the one party within the GNU, which is the DA. Now, you've given many examples, and the latest one, of course, the issue of the budget and VAT, that one party does not side with your party and the two of you collectively make up the majority of seats in Parliament around that issue. How then do you expect to be part of this collective of the Government of National Unity with the DA if there's no movement from the DA? We're looking at the practicalities of it all.
Well, there are many permutations. We'll have to look at the balance of power in the executive as well as in Parliament. But we're not there. We continue to say we're committed to the Government of National Unity because it is being done for the sake of the people. And the people of South Africa have come to accept and appreciate the work that is being done by the ANC leading with all other parties. I also just need to debunk this myth that never disappears, that we're in a coalition with the DA, the Helen Zille's narrative. We're not. We're in a relationship with all the parties who are signatories to the Government of National Unity. We're not in a coalition with a party that obtained 20% of the national vote share when we have 40% of the national vote share. Surely that cannot be correct. We have aimed for consensus by bringing and approaching all parties to join the Government of National Unity. But we are not sharing power with the DA in the way they were trying to reconstruct the narrative about the Government of National Unity. I just saw John Steenhuisen saying that they are willing to come and discuss a power deal. I don't know what do they mean when they see themselves as an equivalent to the ANC in terms of our electoral strength.
Yeah.
We're not equivalent. There are other parties, and I think those parties, without sounding like, we're patronizing them, those parties have got voters, those parties have got their own agenda, and those parties are part of the Government of National Unity. That is how we see it.
No, I've just seen that statement as well from the DA's John Steenhuisen, and I mean, the key header is DA willing to discuss power sharing with the ANC. So I think the terminology is particularly important. And then it continues saying the Democratic Alliance joined the Government of National Unity with one clear purpose: to help grow South Africa's economy and create jobs. We remain fully committed to this goal. To achieve this, the ANC must now demonstrate that it is equally committed to the spirit and substance of sharing power, which is a natural consequence of the last election. Now, let me ask you this. Where's this going to go from here? Because I get a sense that this is a sideways shift with the DA. They're not saying we want to be part of the GNU. They want to be in a power-sharing arrangement with the ANC specifically.
But we are going into negotiations with the Democratic Alliance. We are going to be meeting all political parties that are represented in the two houses of Parliament. And our standpoint as we go to the DA is that we are not in a power-sharing deal with them. And, a lie so repeatedly told soon becomes the truth. But we stand by what we said. You can go to the statement of intent that established the Government of National Unity. You will see that there is no power sharing with the DA. Otherwise, I'm sure certain parties would not have joined the Government of National Unity. That's the first point. The second point, Ashraf, is that things are voted through a legislative process that is codified, including in the Constitution. If we're talking about the Bella Act, that has always been, in the making. There is nothing in the statement of intent that said now all of those bills that are before Parliament or are before the President for ascension must be halted because we're doing a Government of National Unity. We really do need to correct that. In fact, the statement of intent enjoins the DA and all other parties because there's a clause there that says redress and transformation of South Africa must not be reversed by the Government of National Unity.
Okay. Well, Fikile Mbalula made the point in that initial comment that I said where he spoke about a resetting the button. But in doing so, he said, we will engage all political parties, parties within the GNU and parties outside of the GNU. Now, my simple understanding of that, that's a clear statement of intent that the ANC will go with the DA if they are prepared to be part of the collective. But otherwise, there are talks outside of the DA to be part of the collective. That's clearly on the agenda, isn't it?
Yeah, we're basically talking to everyone, and we're more than happy to engage the DA and hear their views and to get their feedback about what is their position in relation to their representation in both the executive not so much the parliament, but in fact, including in parliament, because they are voting for policies that are required for us to implement developmental programs and for the business of government to proceed in an uninterrupted fashion. We're going to ask for their perspective. We have a perspective that says that should any permutation come to reality, we will not have a government of national unity that represents something that we've seen in the last 9 months. Secondly, that there's a lot of squabbling, a lot of disregard for the executive code of ethics by ministers who come from the DA, executive code or a code of ethics alongside the oath they took when they're sworn in. We have to hear from the DA, where do they see themselves in relation to all of that.
Okay. Here's the last thing before I let you go. The Action SA as well as Build One South Africa have made the point that they're part of the negotiations so far as they can avoid the 0.5 percentage point increase of VAT. If that doesn't happen, they wouldn't be part of any agreement with the ANC. Now, we're then getting conflicting reports from others saying that, in fact, that 0.5 will kick in. I mean, just about every bank has already issued a statement warning us that that's what's going to happen. Can you clear it up for us? Where are we at with the 0.5 percentage point increase?
I think in some senses, a number of stakeholders may be running ahead of themselves. I think that we need to allow this political process. It's in the best interest that parties find one another. It's healthy for democracy. And indeed, our reaction and our current talks, which have taken place but are pending insofar as what the Parliament voted for, to find alternative revenue sources in order to offset the matter of the VAT, and to do so, though, without undermining the expenditure side of things, where the budget is very clearly transformative in that it's seeking to fund those areas in the public service that are deserving of reinforcement. So the work begins now. There are several proposals on the table from Action SA. I saw something from BOSA, and there are others that have got ideas about how we can sort out the matter of the VAT.
So can we say very quickly that nothing's confirmed at this point in time, right?
Yes, no, certainly. Let's allow our parties to talk, and that's as far as I can go. I do wish to emphasize that the ANC remains committed to that relationship that is centered around the VAT increase or not increase with Action SA and BOSA. All
right, let's leave it at that. Appreciate your time this afternoon. You're the National Pulse. Mahlengi Bengu Motsiri, the ANC's national spokesperson. Lots to come out of that. We'll play some clips, by the way, from John Steenhuisen as well, because there's some important comments being made every single hour. Absolutely. This is the National Pulse. The Pulse is racing.
EFC is live this Thursday. From the wilds of Reunion Island and the ancient lands of Zimbabwe, two raging bulls meet for a heavyweight title clash as Elvis Moyo takes on Anthony Morrell. Plus Fahis Jacobs and Sibusiso Sovendile fight for bantamweight gold. EFC 122, live from the World Sports Betting Arena. Watch it on SABC Sport Channel on DTT Channel 4 from 7 p.m. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
SA, 5 to 6 a.m.
President Cyril Ramaphosa says business cannot dictate terms to the government or the ANC as tensions rise with its GNU partner, the Democratic Alliance, over the national budget. Mr. Monaghed, now as the president of the Black Business Council, how do you interpret this statement?
Part of the problem that we need then to confront as a country is that you cannot then be held at ransom by a particular party. They are not risking an event where they exit the government of national unity because there is a trade war. We have the time to be fighting over our petty issues whereas Rome is burning.
Elvis Preslin on SAFM.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
All right, let's then talk about another issue on the African continent that is a cause for serious concern. And I'm talking about Algeria and Mali. I would say collectively two of the largest countries in landmass on the continent. I think Algeria is number one. Now, I understand that both countries have decided to ban flights to and from each other's airspace. You may wonder why. Well, we understand there's been tensions between the two. And as the row over a Malian drone that was now recently shot down escalates. So let's find out more about that, the entire, what they call the Sahel States region, with Ibrahim Dean, who's an independent researcher and a political commentator. Ibrahim, appreciate your time. As always, you are now connected to the National Pulse.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So what's the story? Give us some context.
Okay, so what has happened in Mali in recent years, we've seen, coups that have forced out, the Abubakar Keita regime and, the regime after it. And, since then tensions have been brewing, specifically because there's, the Malians have had a conflict, an ongoing conflict since the mid-2010s, over the north in a separatist region, Timbuktu, the Tuareg people. And, since then what has happened is, many of the dissidents have fled to Algeria. Your Mahmoud Diku was one of the protagonists of the initial coup, but once the military started becoming a lot more indiscriminate and heavy-handed, and tensions then have fled. So we saw in 2024, the ending of the Algiers agreement, which was aimed at trying to find a solution between the north and the south of Mali. The formation of a three-state coalition between Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso to protect the junta in these different countries. And the Malians believe that the Algerians are fueling and arming the separatists in the north, without much real evidence, and specifically because many of the towns that the Malians are attacking are actually border Algeria, and in some cases, basically traverse Algerian border regions. And what happened last week was a Malian drone was shot down. It's very difficult to say where it was shot down, when it was shot down. The Malians say it's in the Algerians say it was in their airspace. The Malians say the debris fell 10 kilometers into Mali. It's very difficult to monitor that, but the tensions are over the actual conflict. In the north of Mali, the fact that the Malian government has been failing in its attempts to in a sense quell this separatism and this violence, and the military junta is becoming a lot more unpopular in recent years, and the belief by the Malians that Algeria is fueling this conflict without any real evidence.
Okay, I suppose for all of us listening in, and we're far removed from that region, but I mean, all we want is like, can we attain peace and can we attain justice in that region? I mean, is that likely to happen?
No, I mean, I think there's two factors that are inhibiting this. One is the whole threat of Islamist militancy. And what that has meant is that the responses from these governments have become extremely heavy-handed, indiscriminately attacking civilians. And actually, because it's supposedly Islamist militancy and Al-Qaeda, there's been no criticism. So that's been one of the impediments. So there's, states have used the threat to, basically to consolidate control. And two is, the various coups in the region that have happened over the past 5 years or so in Mali, partially in Algeria, where we saw an election where no one voted, Burkina Faso, Niger, and that has actually saw that has seen a move away from France, which itself is problematic, but more towards Russia, which is a lot more indiscriminate in its allowance of regimes to attack civilians.
All right, now so up to now we're talking about the two countries, but you mentioned Burkina Faso in that triumvirate, right? Now, Burkina Faso is interesting because a lot has happened in that region with the new leader by a coup. We're talking about Ibrahim Traore, right? Now, when going back to the Gaddafi era, which was the last time in that region that a person was able to, right or wrong, inspire a completely new way of thinking, it seems like Ibrahim Traore is doing just that, right? My question, therefore, to you is is he and Burkina Faso able to influence the politics of those two neighboring countries that you referred to, Algeria and Mali?
So, very significantly and interesting. I mean, Ibrahim Traore has a very good propaganda campaign. He's very smart. And so, things in Burkina Faso are not necessarily as good as they may seem from, if you're looking at the YouTube and these clips sponsored a lot by Burkina Faso media. Now, Burkina Faso itself in this situation actually pulled away its ambassador after the drone killing, because what has happened is these coup regimes, your Mali, your Niger, your Burkina Faso, for fears of ECOWAS intervening, have actually formed their own coalition, the Alliance of Sahelian States. And they act unifiedly. In actual fact, they, in a sense, are antagonistic towards Algeria in this situation, even though, Algeria has very good relations with Russia and actually is very critical of France, similar, if you would want to say, to how they view, their worldview. But, the attempt is that, to counter this militancy and in a continued attempt to actually weaken rights in those countries and to protect the military regimes, these states are coupling together and actually worsening the situation. And at the end of the day, what is happening is, the civilian conditions are decreasing, and we're starting to see fight back. And the fight back is, when there's no space for democratic fight back, it becomes militant. And, last year, for example, in northern Mali, we saw, a coalition form, for the liberation, in the sense, of Azawad, which for the first time put self-determination and statehood in its demands. And that coalition is of four, groups, that previously sometimes were antagonistic towards each other, but, fueled by the violence. And, there is perceptions that obviously the support is coming from Algeria because Algeria previously had a role. Now, Algeria-Russia relations are not as strong as it was, but, the regime, again, needs Russia for its survival. So, it's all an attempt to consolidate control. And as these military regimes and, in a sense, dictatorial regimes try to counter each other and to actually just, stay in power by using grievances and, cross-border issues and these tensions to actually as a means of gaining, in the sense, national, rally around the flag effects.
Okay. And I suppose the big question would be, what's the role of the African Union? But don't answer that. That's another whole conversation in its own right. Ibrahim Deen, thanks for your time. Ibrahim Deen is an independent researcher and political commentator here, looking at the region of, Mali and Algeria, neighbors. But they're not chummies at this point in time, just like something that happened in our country too, isn't it? Let's get the news headlines. It's just gone 3:30.
Good afternoon. I'm Kulufelo Defo with the headlines. BOSA leader Mmusi Maimane says the party has identified savings of about 120 billion rand in the short to medium term that could offset the VAT increase proposal. This as political parties that voted in favor of the budget fiscal framework and revenue proposals are set to meet tonight in a virtual meeting. ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula says the party has not taken a decision on the future participation of the DA in Government of National Unity. This after DA, which is the ANC's biggest GNU partner, did not vote to support the fiscal policy framework last week. And further afield, a Russian rocket is reported to have arrived at the International Space Station. On board are 2 Russian astronauts and an American astronaut. I'll have the details at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 southbound slow moving in Braamfontein towards Smith Street. Main Reef Road eastbound in Amalgam has a crash reported at Nasrec Road, and Winnie Mandela Drive northbound slow moving in 4 ways towards Monte Cassino Boulevard. In KZN, the N3 westbound has a stationary truck before Cliffdale. The N2 southbound is queuing towards Spaghetti Junction and Bayard Road westbound slow moving towards South Coast Road. In Cape Town, the M5 southbound has a crash reported after Cromboom Road exit. Bakengracht Street outbound is slow moving towards the elevated freeway, and 35th Avenue southbound in Bishop Levers has flooding reported near Levers Drive. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Right, Zai, you want to talk rugby, but I see the key word in this rugby conversation is the word bomb squad. Tell me more about it.
we are still, Ashraf, very explosive. That's the Springboks. And World Rugby says it's all about fair play, and it's talking about that 7-1 split that the Boks used infamously, and it's here to stay. That's right, the famous strategy of loading the bench with power-packed forwards. Even the aggressive 7-1 split is staying, while critics claimed it might pose safety concerns. World Rugby says the science doesn't back that up. Now, their medical review found no clear evidence that unleashing a squad of fresh forwards late in the game increases injury risk. So for the Boks and their fans, it's a green light to keep blasting the opposition with their signature firepower. Staying with rugby, Jan-Hendrik Wessels is relishing his opportunities as a loose head prop and hooker for the Bulls, regardless of the number on the back of his jersey. Wessels has made a huge impact off the bench for Jake White's troops this season, scoring 4 tries from 12 appearances with just 5 starts. He's now been called up to Rassie Erasmus' first Springbok alignment camp of 2025. On to soccer, SABC Sport can reveal coach Rulani Mokoena has now gone 8 months at Wydad Athletic Club without payment. The two parties are now at a crossroads with a decision to be taken this week on whether Mokoena leaves with immediate effect or sees out the remaining 5 matches, and that's in the Batola Pro League. Now, Wydad appointed Mokoena in July last year, shortly after his surprise exit at Mamelodi Sundowns. In the meantime, Al Hilal, they'll put up a fight and they'll have a target overturning the deficit against Al Ahly in the second leg of the CAF Champions League final tonight, 9 p.m. Al Ahly lost their first leg clash against Al Hilal, lost their first leg clash against Al Ahly, but they're now in good domestic form, having won their last 2 league matches in a row. Elsewhere, Leicester City debutant Jeremy Monga had to wear a blank shirt when he became the second youngest player in Premier League history. Monga came off the bench in the 74th minute of Leicester's 3-0 home defeat by Newcastle United yesterday. At 15 years and 271 days old, Monga became the second youngest player to play in the competition behind Arsenal's Ethan Nwaneri, who debuted at 15 years, 181 days in September 2022. And finally, athletics former South African 200-meter champion Sinesipho Dambile is considering a move to the 4x400 relay team ahead of the World Senior Championships in Tokyo, Japan later this week. Now, he trains under coach Thabo Matabedi, and he says he plans to compete in both the 200 meters and 400 meter events.
Yeah, I'm starting to prove myself in 400 for sure. You know, I always said last year that I was more open to run the 4x4, but now I had to go back on the drawing board and start putting in the work, so that I know that I deserve to be there. It's not a favor because of I can run the 400, you know, and definitely gonna run a couple of 400s, probably 2 or 3, just to earn my spot on the 4x4. But I'm always, up for the challenge for sure.
That's a wrap of the National Brief Sport. There'll be more.
Before you go, I want to ask you, so this Arsenal youngster had to wear blank, he's 15 years old or something, right?
Yeah.
So he had to wear blank jersey, football top,
yeah,
because he's underage.
Yes.
Because they're gambling, they got a gambling sponsor. Is that correct, or is there something else?
Yes, there's, I would say Ofcom rules, but there's some regulations around it. So, yeah.
I think, here's a thought for you, not for now. The proliferation of and I know, even in South Africa, we have sports events, even football, that are sponsored by gambling institutes. And there's been this counter argument to say it's proliferating around the world. And is that a good thing or not? Don't answer that. Just think about it.
I could think of one cricket player that refused to wear an alcohol brand. But anyway.
Okay. But we're talking about gambling here. Okay, that's it.
Oh, gosh.
Right, more sports in an hour.
Can you hear that? It's the pitter-patter, letting you know your roof is leaking. Terrible timing. The sound you were hoping for is the splish-splash of the beach holiday you've been saving up for. But don't let cash flow hold you back. Do both. Apply for a Nedbank personal loan and get our best interest rate with a loan of up to 400,000 Rand. Apply online at nedbank.co.za. See money differently. Nedbank. We're a licensed FSP and registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Right, so more with Zai in an hour's time, thereabouts. Anyway, right. Okay, there's more to come. It does mean we're going to get your thoughts. Well, here's the thing. I asked you earlier on about street names, because I gave the example of Barry Herzog Street in the Emerentia area, very close to the SABC, and I just wondered to what degree do we actually pay attention to street names? Now, some meaning the names of the people. For some people, those names have been there for a long, long time. So do we know who they are? And then, of course, we also know there's been a lot of changes of street names in the last maybe 5 or 10 years. Do you know much about them? So, for example, Elof Street in Joburg, I think is it still Elof Street? It was like biggest street around. And then I made the point about, in Cape Town, you've had different names, but now you've got Nelson Mandela Boulevard and Alan Suzman. It wasn't there before. I certainly remember Daval Drive and whether that still exists. How do you feel about that? I mean, just how much do you know about those people where the streets were named after them, and then the new people? How much attention do you pay to that to say, well, this is why we call it what we call it? I'm going to take your calls on that and everything else too, including, of course, the subject that just will not go away. It's going into extra time, not quite injury time. I'm talking about the GNU, right? But maybe linked to all of that, let's talk to someone who's going to give us a comment about the future of the South African state right after this.
Ashraf Garda on the National Pulse.
Okay, so what then is the future of the South African state? It's an interesting one because, on the one hand we talk about now, but just overall, what is the state of South Africa? Not so much as the state of the nation, around a whole lot of issues of capability, capacity, ethics as well of the state, right? So with me is Dr. Musa Ngcele, who's a political economist and academic director of the Nelson Mandela School of Public Governance. Dr. I appreciate your time. Thanks for connecting on the National Pulse.
Good day, Ashraf. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me, and good day to your listeners.
Thank you. I suppose first up we should ask you, unlike asking the president this, just what is the future of the South African state? Perhaps you want to give that an answer?
Yeah, I mean, I'm coming to you from the perspective of the volume on the state of the state that we have been working. Maybe to start at the back end of the question that you then asking, I mean, currently, as you mentioned, we are, while politically significant, we know that it's...
Okay, I'll tell you what, we're struggling with that line. Let's see if I can put you back to keys and then get you reconnected, Dr. Musa Ngcele. We're just battling to hear Dr. Ngcele for now, right? It just gives me an opportunity then in the meantime to pick out some of your comments as well. And here's one, Ashraf. There's this new suburb in Harare in Zimbabwe. They were up in arms against the council for the name they had been given. They preferred to be called Warren Park North. Warren Park is the adjacent suburb. None of them knew who Warren was, and history has it that he was a settlers general who was given that farm as a reward for killing so many blacks, from Andrew in Butterworth. Well, Andrew, that's exactly the point. How do we not know, including me, silly me, the story of the people that these streets are named after? It's a big deal. Here's another.
Afternoon, Uncle Ashraf. In Durban, there's a street called Problem Mkhize. I'd really like to know who that guy is, eh? Problem Mkhize.
No problem with Problem Mkhize. There we are. Well, who is Problem Mkhize? Just tell me who he is. Somebody's going to know exactly who he is, right? I think there's some Simelane in Durban as well. I'm trying to think of the first name, but I think a very common name, and I heard it the other day. What is it? Chota Motara. And again, I must confess, I would assume these are struggle heroes. I don't know enough about them, right? Okay, here's another.
Hi. Does the ANC first and foremost acknowledge the fact that they didn't win the elections? They just happen to have the majority of percentages in that coalition with the 39%. Can they probably...
Let me see. I'm not too sure what happened there. Okay, there's just some technical issues. Let's get to another.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. I'm very surprised that EFF and MK Party together they vote with the DA against the ANC rule. So for me, it's clear indication that there is an element of hypocrisy. Because Malema is always criticizing DA and its policy So now it's raised a big question that how you vote with them against the ANC, because they're saying that their policies, them and the ANC are the same. And also MK Party, they said they got nothing to do with the DA, but they are the one who voting for them. So now, do you understand that there is no truth in this South Africa? Thanks, Nkosinathi Mbanjo from Mkambatini, Maritzburg.
Well, I mean, you think that's the issue, that there's no truth in this South Africa? I don't know. Well, you want to call in, do so. We're going to reconnect with my guest in a moment. But it gives us a chance, certainly, for me to take some of your calls as well, right? And, as always, the numbers to call in. Save those numbers, like, permanently to call in so you know exactly what I'm talking about. But you can also call on the one hand, but also you can send us a WhatsApp too. So let me give you those numbers to call in that you must save: 086 000 2032, and then WhatsApp text, voice note options available, 0614 104 107. And then do tweet. Many people do tweet right away, which I love, I must say. Just sort of tweet live now. As long as you use the hashtag The National Pulse and then tag SAFM Radio and myself, we will pick it up. Tweet with your comments as well. I believe we've reconnected with our guest, and we'll do that right after this.
X at SAFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
Right, let's. So now we do have Dr. Musa once again back with us. So we started by asking you about, when we talk about the future, of the South African state. Well, perhaps give us an answer on that. What do you make of the future of the South African state?
Yeah, thanks, Garda, and I hope you can hear me better now. So, you were saying that we're in a moment of the GNU, and what I was trying to say is that we know that we are, while the GNU is politically significant, it is fluid, it is uncertain, and it is unfolding. So what we need to be focusing on in terms of the future is what feels more concrete and enduring, which are the key pertinent problems and the patterns of fragmentation of governance that we will see characterizing South Africa for a while to come. And this will be, of course, from the national all the way to the local and at various institutions and bureaucracies as well. So in terms of thinking about the future, we need to be asking questions that are solving problems. So what kinds of adaptive governance structures will deliver results under these fragmented, hybrid, and uncertain conditions? The GNU is only one such example of what we could see and what is possible there. But we need to start thinking more concretely about concrete problems that are people facing, and think about these adaptive governance structures, because not everything will look the same. Context matters in this sense. Not everything will need to sit in a top-down presidential intervention. Others are in far more fragmentation that require local coalitions that are unified by a problem and solving them. And so that's what I think will be the future from a problem-solving perspective.
Well, do you get a sense that the goings-on and the agreements and the disagreements of the last month or so may have changed your outlook for the South African state? Meaning, if I asked you this question in November, would you have answered differently?
Well, I think already in November we could see where things are going. I mean, even with the GNU, yes, I must admit that there was quite a lot of optimism, especially from us academics, that the GNU is not only another miracle yet in South Africa, but it's one that might be able to survive. But I think in that is still the question of, was the GNU ever going to be an institution that's an arrangement that solves problems? And what we've seen so far is that it seems to be good at caretaking and bringing about stability, but we worry that we're not seeing people's conditions or prospects of improvement of conditions at the moment.
But I mean, to be fair, even when we've had a government that is a majority led by one party, I'm talking of the ANC for close on to 30 years, were they able to solve problems in the country?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I think that part of the reason is that we've seen what has been happening in the political arena. I think that, under a one-party state, we saw that a lot of what was happening in the state itself, including our bureaucracies, our local government, tended to be a manifestation of what was happening in the political arena. The fracturing within the African National Congress is an example, but also it was a reflection of the underlying structural issues. I think that we have to grapple with the fact that under conditions of high inequality and conditions of low growth, we turn to a condition of zero-sum game, where there is firstly a deterioration of a national narrative that is about the dignity of people. We see an erosion of cooperation within politics itself, but also between politics and the state and civil society. And what that then translates to is it creates pressures on institutions such as the state. And when we see these pressures on institutions such as the state, it can encourage elements of predation on the state itself, such as in terms of the public resources. And so it's, you're absolutely right. Even under a one-party state, that's what we saw. But I think the problem right now is when we're thinking about what are we doing as a country, do we take cognizance of the fact that we still have this huge underlying structural constraint, which is inequality, and how has it worked its way into governance? And how are we solving that, even when thinking about the current structure of the budget?
Well, I mean, look, as we talk to you, as you know, many other parties jockeying for position regarding the GNU or its new iteration. We'll see what happens in the next day or so. But central to that is the oft-repeated argument that it doesn't look like these parties put South Africa first, which is another whole conversation. But here's the important one to you, which I'll leave you with, right? In terms of the South African state that you talk about, right, would it be better served by a GNU led by the ANC-DA as it stands now, or would it be better served by the ANC losing control of its situation and another party taking over?
I mean, that question is challenging because it ring fences the current configuration of political parties. I think if I come at it, the real issue here is about the kind of leadership that we need as a country. And once again, the material conditions of the country are problematic because at times we have leaders that seek to seize the moment for predation purposes. So I can't speak to the political parties at the moment, because I think that we just need transformational leadership, and how that configuration looks like is for somebody else to comment
understandably on. And the big question is, can the country transform with political parties or outside the political party space? Appreciate your time. Lots to consider. Dr. Musa Ngcele, who's a political economist and academic director of the Nelson Mandela School of Public Governance. I'll take your calls because I really want to get a sense of your pulse right after this.
WAFCON preparations continue as African champions Banyana Banyana meet again with the Scorchers in a thrilling pitch battle. This is the international friendly. Experience the beauty of African women's football. South Africa versus Malawi. This Tuesday, 8 April at 2:30 p.m. Live streaming on SABC Plus, SABC2, SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4, and at 3 p.m. on SABC radio stations. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Hey Mzansi, autumn may be here, but we're extending the sunshine on our Blue Sky offers at Ford. Get a new Everest XLT from only 942,000 Rand, or just 9,999 per month when financed through Ford Credit, an authorized financial services and registered credit provider. 10% deposit, primeless 5%, 40% residual. And remember, every Blue Sky offer comes standard with our Ford Family Promise. That's just 9,999 at your nearest Ford dealer today. T&Cs apply.
Right, the Small Business Plug is proudly brought to you by Smart SME by Santam. Now head on over to this website, which is radio2000.coza. Make a note, radio2000.coza, for the latest small business plug podcast. Smart SMEs, tailored insurance specifically designed to give small business owners the freedom to focus on their business, knowing that they have the insurance cover they need. Website santam.coza or SMS Smart SME to 34852 to get a quote.
You're listening to the National Pulse.
Okay, let's get your calls. Yeah, it is the National Pulse. What's moving the National Pulse today? Mandla in Cape Town, let's get your thoughts on the ANC.
Yes, Ashraf, my brother. Ashraf, this dishonest spokesperson of the ANC coming to national TV and talk nonsense here, and you fail to engage her. She's saying that they are the leader of the GNU based on their 40% that they got. But she fails to recognize the 21% that the DA got. When she's talking about the DA, she wants the DA to be equal to other political parties. But them, the ANC must get special treatment as 40% party, but they don't recognize the 21% of the DA.
Well, I mean, I hear what you're saying. I mean, the truth is, if you listen in the last week or two, I mean, every single party is jockeying for position, trying to lead from the front. And in doing so, they are enhancing their own position and knocking everybody else down. So we'll get some sound, by the way, from John Steenhuisen just now. We're going to replay that interview coming up very shortly. But, I mean, I get your point. The truth is, each party is pushing their own agenda. And they are. It's up to us to decide.
Ashraf, these ANC people have messed up this country. SABC didn't have money to pay their employees. They were about to be retrenched. They were crying on TV. And you guys are not tough on these ANC people for the past 30 years.
No, but I can't. You see, when you say you guys, you're making like such a sweeping statement. I have said it so critically that if you look at where the country is now, 30 years, the majority of the blame of the running of the country has got to be with the African National Congress. In the same way, if you, for example, were supporting Kaizer Chiefs as a football club and you wonder how did a giant like Kaizer Chiefs now becoming a struggling mid-table club, then you have to question the leadership of that club. So I've said that on many occasions.
Yes, Ashraf. Look, they are shouting transformation. We all want transformation, but not the transformation of the ANC, where they choose their friends for this. And transformation needs money. You cannot transform an economy that is dying. You must first make the economy grow, then you transform a growing economy, not a dying economy.
Okay.
This is a Mugabe-style transformation that the ANC is bringing to this country.
All right. Mandla, let's leave it at that. I'm tempted to say Amandla, but let's just leave it at Amandla. Appreciate your time. And look, that's what I like. We often agree, we sometimes disagree, but you certainly got us thinking, and that really is the purpose of the type of calls that we take, which is profound because it gets all of us thinking. Right, Injabulo in Durban, go for it. Injabulo, hello.
Hi, Ashraf, how are you doing?
Yeah, very good indeed. You're live on the air. Go for it.
Superb. I think Manta called this morning as well and was quite angry with Kathy as well. So it's funny that I actually called after this morning. But I also wanted to talk about the importance of names and the ones that you guys were questioning. Stalwart Simelane.
Yeah, Stalwart, that's it, yes. Yeah.
So, Problem Mkhize, he earned that name. He became a problem for the apartheid regime. Started out as a trade unionist and then was recruited into the MK, later into the SANDF as a colonel. So these guys actually are, what do you call it? I'll say the lieutenants to the commanders that we all know about, the Chief Albert Luthuli, the Nelson Mandelas, the Robert Sobukwe, but these guys are actually the ones who did the leg.
How do we popularize those names besides giving them, naming streets after them? I mean, how do we school people so that when you say, Stalwart Simelane, that we know exactly who we're talking about? Because I mean, clearly, if you're going to name a street after that person, there's a reason you're doing so, right?
I think for me, it's to tap into technology. We need to put QR codes on all these roads, on the floors so the kids can interact with them, and the importance of knowing these names.
Actually, I think you are so spot on. We have to also move with the technology, and we talk about artificial intelligence and all that. We don't need to get people to go and Google it. They should be able to know it on the street, even as you're driving past. So, points taken.
Even on maps. I
Absolutely.
mean, Stawat Simelane started off as a teacher. You guys are asking about him, and then led the Defiance campaign. These are the people we need to know about. They were very instrumental in the struggle, and getting the names named after them, the roads, is very important. But we understand in the economy, it might not be the correct time to be able to do these things like we want to, because there's other pressing problems.
All right. Well, I've enjoyed this conversation. Actually, say Stalwart Injabula, if you don't mind. Much appreciate your time. Right. Right. Let's get to Romeo in Potch. Hi, Romeo.
Yes, sir. How are you doing?
Yeah, very good indeed. Go for it. What's your point?
My point is this thing of the GNU and the lack of leadership. You see the reason why the ANC is in the position where they are today. It's because of lack of leadership. They are not decisive. The reason why we have problem with the land question today is because of the people that we put in power that cannot decide. I mean, this is very simple. If the DA showed them that they are actually in one accord with the AfriForum and the other people that doesn't want South Africa to move forward, and they should just be kicked out. Why do we still have to wait for the DA to tell us what to do in this country?
Well, I don't know if it's one. I don't know if it's one party telling you what to do. To be fair, they all have points of agreement and they all have points of disagreement. For example, even like Action SA, they say we'll support something provided we have no change, there's no VAT increase, meaning every party puts up its own position. So at this point in time, it's not a case of somebody kicking people out. They clearly disagree. I think we know that, right? But their job is to... Well, they're playing a game of chess, man. I mean, seriously, they all are. They're playing a game of chess and trying to get what's best for them, win as many, pawns off the board before they get to checkmate, whatever checkmate is. And I would think for all of them, actually, checkmate would be, can you run the country on your own? Thanks for that. Thanks for that call, Romeo. Here's another quick one that I would get that I think is very topical too.
But Ashraf, is it not the strategic move by the DA to pretend as if they don't want to be in the GNU, so that the ANC can allow Bosa and Action SA to be in the GNU, and then later the DA will say, I'm participating in the GNU, and that will increase the numbers of the right-wing ideology in the GNU. The numbers of the right-wing ideology of the DA will be increasing to surpass that of the ANC. Adid Bushbakridge.
Well, thanks for that. You're saying it's a strategic move. I would think everything every single party does is strategic. It cannot ever be anything but strategic. Right, 4 o'clock. Let's get the news. Here's Kolofelo Tiafu.
Thanks, Ashraf. Top stories. The Sawa Bosa discovers solution to lay off VAT increase proposal, and a state witness killed inside Wynberg Magistrates Court. Good afternoon. Build One South Africa leader Mmusi Maimane says the party has identified savings of about 120 billion rand in the short to medium term that could offset the VAT increase proposal. This as political parties that voted in favour of the budget fiscal framework and revenue proposals are set to meet tonight in a virtual meeting. The meeting has been called by ANC Chief Whip Mdumiseni Ntuli to consider proposals for other alternative revenue generation measures to offset the VAT increase from next month. Bosa maintains that it is opposed to VAT hike and says it's committed to finding alternatives to plug the budget shortfall. Maimane elaborates.
A 2% efficiency cut for bloated provincial bureaucracies will deliver a savings of 15.3 billion rand. If we rationalize our diplomatic missions and cut VIP protection for politicians, we could be able to get round to about a 3 billion rand savings. If we downsize in the medium term the size of the cabinet and eliminate deputy ministers' positions, which is something we've always held, you will find a 3.9 billion rand savings into that. If you merge duplicative marketing agencies into a single trade and branding entity. That will bring us to about 5 billion rand savings.
Meanwhile, ANC Secretary-General Fikile Mbalula says the party has not taken a decision on the future participation of the DA in Government of National Unity. This after DA, which is the ANC's biggest GNU partner, did not vote to support the fiscal policy framework last week. Various ANC officials have since called for the DA to exit the GNU, stating that the party cannot play opposition and still want to remain in government. However, the DA has made it clear that the party is still committed to the GNU and open to a resolution on the current budget impasse. Briefing the media on the outcomes of the National Working Committee meeting in Johannesburg today, Mbalula says the ANC will continue engaging with political parties.
What we have agreed to do is to reset the button by way of ensuring that this GNU going forward has got to be governed by rules, not just the statement of intent. What rules govern us as members of the Government of National Unity? The fact of the matter is that the ANC does not have the absolute majority to govern.
Police Union POPCRU has blamed the high crime rate in the country on the poor relationship between the police and communities. This was heard during the inaugural National Policing Summit, which kicked off in Ekurhuleni today. The three-day summit is aimed at adapting policing strategies to a changing criminal landscape and enhancing crime-fighting methods. POPCRU President Thulani Ngwenya.
Our officers are underworked and underpaid, adequately equipped to deal with complex nature of crime. We cannot demand efficiency from a service that lacks necessary tool to support from their immediate commander. Crime cannot be fought by police alone. A lack of strong partnership between SAPS community organizations and stakeholders weaken our ability to create a sustainable safety strategy.
A manhunt is underway following the fatal shooting of a state witness inside the Wynberg Magistrates Court in Cape Town today. The unidentified witness was declared dead at the scene. Police spokesperson Wesley Twigg says the circumstances of how the gunman managed to enter the court premises will form part of the investigation.
Wynberg police registered a murder case for investigation following a shooting incident at court in Church Road, Wynberg on Tuesday. The victim sustained gunshot wounds to his body and was declared deceased on the scene by medical personnel. The motive for the attack forms part of the police investigation, and arrests are yet to be made.
And finally, further afield, a Russian rocket is reported to have arrived at the International Space Station. On board are 2 Russian astronauts and an American astronaut. The BBC's Paul Moss has the details.
It's one of the few areas where cooperation between the West and Russia has continued, despite tensions over the invasion of Ukraine. The International Space Station currently has Russians, Americans and a Japanese astronaut on board. They'll now be joined by another mixed crew who'll spend 8 months in orbit carrying out a variety of scientific experiments. Sanctions on Russia have limited the country's space program. It suffered a series of failures in recent years, but with the more Russia-friendly Donald Trump now in the White House, some predict more joint space projects could soon be launched.
Recapping the top story this hour, Build One South Africa leader Mmusi Maimane says the party has identified savings of about 120 billion rand in the short to medium term that could offset the VAT increase proposal. I'll have your headlines at 4:30. For SFM News, I'm Kolofelo Tefo.
For SFM Sport, I'm Zai Khan. Let's go to soccer news. Kaizer Chiefs Nasruddin Nabi is targeted by African giants, and we'll bring you rugby with the Bulls focusing on 3 areas ahead of the Challenge Cup. Details around 4:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 southbound slow moving towards Boysons and Republic Road westbound in Randburg has a crash reported before Bram Fisher Drive. In KZN, the N3 westbound has a stationary track before Cliffdale and Bayard Road westbound is slow moving towards South Coast Road. In Cape Town, the N2 outbound has a crash before Victoria Street and the M5 southbound has a crash reported after Krombom Road exit. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
Switch to stream with SABC Plus. No subscription fees. Stream anywhere, anytime. Zero subscription fees. Download SABC Plus on Android or iOS and watch the Betway Premier Soccer League, the English Premier League, and the Bundesliga live. You can also catch up with Uzalo, Skim Sam, Generations on demand and listen to your favorite radio stations live. Ukhozi, Umhlobo Wenene, Radio 2000 and 5FM, all for free. Switch to stream with SABC Plus now. No subscription fees. Stream anywhere, anytime with SABC Plus.
WAFCON preparations continue as African champions Banyana Banyana meet again with the Scorchers in a thrilling pitch battle. This is the international friendly. Experience the beauty of African women's football. South Africa versus Malawi. This Tuesday, 8 April at 2:30 p.m. Live streaming on SABC Plus, SABC2, SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4, and at 3 p.m. on SABC radio stations. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
Further comments that you have on street names and just how well do you know your street names? That means the people. How much of an effort have you made to find out who they really are, past and present? Or is it just a name and you just ignore? And so, for example, Elof Street in Joburg has been Elof Street since I was a lightie. And I promise you, it can only be named after the person, but I have no idea. Never made the effort. That's me. Do you have a similar experience as well? And what about those names that you do know? Let's hear about it. I'll take your comments and calls just now. You can tweet it out as well. Just tag SFM Radio and tag myself, Ashraf Garda. Use the hashtag #TheNationalPulse, right? We'll get a statement from the SABC regarding the story that spoke about the dropping of the Afrikaans TV news over the weekend, and the SABC confirming that was an error of sorts. I'm paraphrasing, but that's not the case. So we'll get a statement on that coming up shortly. But I'll tell you what, you'd certainly know that when we talk about what's moving the national pulse, there's no question it has got to be the GNU. And you know that on a day where Action SA comments and Build One South Africa comments and the ANC comments and the DA comments, and maybe there's some others still. The day is still young. There's time for them to comment as well. There's no question about it. It has certainly got us all connected to understanding what's going to happen next. So I made the point to Build One South Africa. Boza, their leader, Musi Maimane, made the point that the party will work with all political parties committed to stopping a VAT increase. And as part of that, they've come up with some missions, practically according to them, as to how you can avoid a VAT increase but still be able to earn the revenues that government needs to be able to ensure that we all have a better life for all. Well, let's get the thoughts of Nobuntu Hlazo Webster, the Boza deputy leader. Appreciate your time and thanks for connecting to us here on the National Pulse.
Thank you so much for having me, Ashraf, at this time when we're engaging on a very, very important matter.
Thank you. Of course, of the many things that you may say, the most fundamental one is what's come through from your leader, which is, hey, we don't want a VAT increase and we have a plan. So what's your plan?
Absolutely, we don't want a VAT increase, but there are ways in which we can generate revenue. There are ways in which we can look at expenditure cuts that can get us that fiscal hole or that fiscal gap that we're looking to fill. Now, we've tabled quite a comprehensive outline of what those are, but to just speak broadly, the first is that from the perspective of expenditure savings or expenditure cuts, when you look at the NEF medium-term budget, we're saying that let's actually make sure that we rather have a sensible ramp up of the National Empowerment Fund budget, because even in the previous year, they were not even able to spend up to 3 billion, but you've got a 20 billion, an over 20 billion allocation. So we're saying that make that saving and spread the allocation over the medium term and make it in total at least maybe double of what they were able to spend in the previous medium term. And in that way, you save already about 20 billion. We're saying that if you were, from a revenue perspective, to introduce a 6% sin tax on online gambling, you could raise in the region of 80 billion. just on a syntax on online gambling. And we're saying that we also have to look absolutely at the bailouts that we constantly are giving to SOEs. And in that way, you can save 6.6 billion as an example. And one of the things that has been very clear when you look at that whole budget, when you look at the whole fiscal framework, is that there isn't a commitment and downsize cabinet and look at perks, look at the things that would actually hurt the politicians, which is what actually has to happen, because ultimately we are currently looking to put the burden on South Africans to pay for what has actually been in the bigger scheme of things, mismanagement, corruption, and inefficiencies over the past 10 years.
So you're saying even now, at this, say, 11th hour of the budget, being adopted, that whatever's been agreed upon up to now, right, that there's still a sense that the punishment of us having, a type of fiscal drag cannot be met by politicians. It has to be the public, which is what the VAT increase would do, right?
So we're absolutely saying it can't be. This is what we're saying. So
yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. You're saying that's the position right now, and you disagree with that, yeah?
That's our position right now, and that's our position upon which it's the condition that we gave. It's the position upon which we supported that fiscal framework. It was not a blank check. We were not saying we're simply blindly supporting it. We said there are conditions, and we, as is known, there are 30 days for a review or an adjustment to that fiscal framework. And so that is where we stand. We have not moved from that. We are engaged. Even tonight, we are meeting with the ANC. We are engaged consistently in trying to find a way. And I'll be honest and say the ANC has been very open and has been very welcoming of some of what we've put on the table.
Okay, so what's the plan? You're meeting tonight, right? I mean, obviously, you're not the only party that's got an opinion or a view on this one. Of course, the DA has got it, and so is the ANC and many others too. What's the next step in the process? I mean, your input and other parties' input, and then at what stage does it come together to say we agree or we disagree?
So that has to happen within the 30 days. We all table our various alternatives. The ANC looks at them. And for us, actually, this is about a win for South Africa. It's not really about whose alternative do you take, what do you take from who. It's about saying, do you land at a place where you can retract the VAT hike? Do you land at a place where we can say, broadly speaking, when we look at this budget, it's for the people? And that's what it is for us. There is a 30 days since last week, Wednesday, process that is going to take place, and that happening, we will then hopefully, and this is what we want out of this process, have the reviewed and adjusted fiscal framework that we're then able to pass as Parliament, and then we move on to the next two steps, which is the division of revenue and the appropriations bill of the budget process.
Okay.
And so the budget process is far from complete.
All right. So help us understand this. If your position is not accepted, I mean, it's possible another position can be accepted, which you may well then agree with it. I mean, that's the type of negotiations that takes place. But if after all these deliberations, we then still have a 0.5 percentage point increase with another 0.5 promised in inverted commas in a year's time, what then is the position of Build One South Africa?
The position of Build One South Africa is that our support is based on a retraction of the 1% when it is in total VAT hike that we have, or 1 percentage point VAT hike that has been tabled by the Minister of Finance. That is our position. And like I say, there are still 2 steps to follow in terms of the budget process. And at that point, we cannot is burdening South Africans in that way.
Now, maybe just the last thing for now. I mean, just about every South African, and of course, many people are completely listening to the show because they're connected to understanding what the mood of the nation is and what I'd call the mood of or what's moving the national pulse today. Just about every one of them are concerned. They have strong opinions about their own parties that they support, but they don't really know what's going to happen next, and that brings a lot of fear into it. So, without getting into the different party policies, right? Are you hopeful to things that we would be able to clinch a deal? And then linked to that is the position of the DA. There are many who just dismiss them to say, well, you know what, if they did not support the budget before, like, why would you even have them part of the GNU? Just cast them aside. and many others who are maybe more practical in their approach to say it's important for the country that these parties remain within, whether you want to call it a GNU or a grand coalition. We can have that debate, doesn't really matter. What are your thoughts as a party on that?
Our thoughts on as a party are this: the GNU has to have an agreed upon plan. We ourselves as One South Africa have put forward and are putting forward a growth charter that we would want to be considered by whoever is in the GNU. The very issue with the GNU has been that there was not a plan. There was not a consolidated plan that was agreed upon by the parties in the GNU to say this is how we are working together and this is the trajectory that we are going on together. And so that is a start. So regardless of who's there, what's important is that there is a meeting of minds and an agreement on what the plan is for South Africa. And that is our position when it comes to the GNU, to say that the GNU, as it exists now, the problems that we have today are because you have parties that could not come together and agree before they formed that coalition to say that this is what we're doing, these are the policies that we're basing on, and this is the direction that you're going. And when it comes to the DA, really, the reality is that the DA, when you look at their submission, had actually, in effect, agreed to the 0.5% VAT hike and only withdrew because they were not getting the things that they had put on the table, which were quite narrow-minded, some of the submissions, which were about the Cape Port and some of the things that are important to them and not necessarily out of benefit to the South Africans, particularly the poor and marginalized South Africans of this country, which everyone purports to be wanting to protect at this time.
Okay, so I mean, at this point, and just the last thing, I mean, we clearly have an impasse. You don't want to have that, no matter which parties we may all support philosophically. You want ultimately all the parties within the country to pull in one direction. So, excuse me, within that impasse, what for you would be the high road of the impasse, and what for you would be the low road?
The high road for the impasse, first of all, would be that we take into consideration, and the ANC takes into consideration, the Minister of Finance and Treasury take into consideration all the alternatives that have been put on the table, and there's a retraction of the VAT hike. What then happens from there, and what that means for the various parties, has ultimately got to be in the best interests of South Africans. But ultimately, what we care about at this point is that there's a budget that doesn't burden South Africans. And I mean, we're only speaking about VAT now. There's bracket creep in that budget, which we actually also want to. There are other issues of empowering, for instance, of the SIU that we would want to see, and the resourcing of the SIU, so that we don't have the wastage and corruption that we see that takes from the expenditure. Those are some of the things that we would want to see. We want to see more investment into job creation in that budget, because really what is really crippling South Africans is unemployment in this country. That's what we want to see. And for me, those would be what I would call the high road.
Okay, well, to rephrase the to be or not to be, it's to see or not to see. Appreciate your time. Nobunto Glazo Webster, the BOZA deputy leader, giving their perspective about hey, no VAT increase, but here's a way. We have around it and we can all live and survive. True or not? Let's talk policing after this.
My name is Jabu Mahlangu, a.k.a. Shuffle the Pack, a.k.a. 1 Hour Swing. I start my day with a short prayer. I give hugs to my kids. And I'm very playful. I love all the genre, but Kwaito is number one. Kwaito is our culture. About the late Mandoza, about the late Mapaputsi, and I could relate. And it's in us focus. Ivory Coast, for me, it was a beautiful country. I know Utabanye Batande Zindabu, Mauritius, Nana, there's window is a love. SABC Sport, this is the main one. Wonkela Manyama channel, Azalwe, because of SABC.
Catch Jabu Shuffle Mahlangu, unpacking the beautiful game in a lingo you love on match days, live on Latuma. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Okay, let's talk about policing and important issues around that too. There's been a policing summit that's taken place earlier today, and the President, Ramaphosa, opened and addressed the policing summit at the Emperor's Palace Convention Center in Ekurhuleni in the Gauteng region, very near the airport, of course, right? So let's do this. Let me first bring in Kamogelo Mogotsi, the Ministry of Police spokesperson. Appreciate your time, Kamogelo, rather. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Ashraf, and good afternoon to the listeners.
Thank you. Now, let me do this. I made the point about the president being there and addressing the summit itself. This is what he had to say.
Not all police officials or officers are corrupt, but the community that we serve often articulate a concern that a number of the police who are serving them are corrupt. Now, we need to address this. We need to begin in a visible way to distance our police from corrupt activities. And the police also must act against those amongst the police who embark on corrupt activities, so that we should have police who will shy away from being tempted, from being lured into corrupt activities. This is an important task that we need to undertake. The police must be seen as guardians of the safety of our people. They must be seen as the police officers who are there to ensure that they protect our people. It is not enough to demonstrate that we are prosecuting South African Police Service members guilty of corruption. We have to instill a culture of honesty and integrity in the police. That is what we need to do. Now, the applause on this is coming from the left side. I want to hear it coming from the right side as well, where the police are. Because it is yourselves as the police who must safeguard your own integrity, who must make sure that as the people of our country look at you, they look at you as people who are there to serve them with dignity and with integrity.
Okay, strong words from the president. Let me bring in once again the spokesperson for the Ministry of Police, Kamogelo Mogotsi. I'm not too sure whether he was sitting on the left side or the right side, Kamogelo, when the president made his comments.
It was on the left.
Okay, noted, right. He did say, however, that the police needs to be the guardians of society. I'm paraphrasing, and then made the point they need to be, like champions of integrity. And that's what we need. And I think the key word is that's what we need to work towards, right? Isn't that surprising that even like 30 years into democracy, we're still trying to work towards it as opposed to that being an absolute given?
Indeed, it is a concern, the fact that 31 years now into democracy, or almost, it is something that we are still striving towards. But let me reassure you, the ministry is up to the task.
Okay, why then, in terms of today's summit, I suppose, what is the overall purpose? Was it a signpost to say this is what we're doing right or this is what we're doing wrong, and how do we then improve our position as the police, or was it something beyond that?
So I think just to give a bit of background, it's almost 8 months ago that the ministry assumed office, and it received a full orientation as to the portfolio. And from that, we gained an understanding as to the challenges in our policing system and the measures we should implement to address those challenges. And as per the summit's theme, it talks about efficiency in action, optimizing South Africa's policing potential. The summit is, in essence, seeking to lay the foundations towards the policing that we want, one that we've identified is possible, and that is one that is effective, efficient, responsive, and proactive. And I think from the summit, we are we are going to be ushering in a new type of policing. And there are certain key enablers that we've identified that will assist greatly in achieving this type of policing that we want. And the outcomes from the summit will then be implemented throughout the year. And the ministry will be monitoring closely the implementation of these outcomes.
Okay, certainly I'm very interested in this new type of policing. Tell me more.
So it's an effective, efficient, responsive, and proactive police service, one that is attuned to the ever-changing needs of communities, and I think also with the evolving of technology as well. So we want a police service that services the needs of the people, notwithstanding the challenges that might exist. For instance, one aspect that we were looking at was the ratio of police officers to citizens. So that's one aspect, to say, never mind the constraints that might be in there, but how do we use what we have now? How do we maximize the resources that we have now to achieve this policing that is effective, efficient, professional, and responsive to citizens?
Isn't the issue of money a big deal? I mean, even now with the potential VAT increase, it's come on the back of governments not having enough money for the most basic needs in South African society, right? And often in the past few months, whenever we've chatted to different departments about very important service delivery issues, like the standard answer, I'm going back to health as a good example, is like, sorry, we don't have the money. So isn't that going to be another big issue for the policing? Never mind the good intentions. Do you have the money?
The one thing that the ministry has always been upfront about is to say that there are financial constraints. Ever so often we hear about budget constraints, we hear about reprioritization of funds. But last night the minister actually hosted a ministerial business commitment dinner. And this is where we now solidified the partnership that we have with business. Business has come on board to say, we want to help in the fight against crime. And there are certain things that business has pledged that they will partner with the SAPS on. And just to mention a few, business has come on board to say, we will automate certain police stations, and we're starting with 5 police stations as pilot stations. And thereafter, we will then roll it out nationwide. Another aspect that they're coming on board with is with regards to laboratories. We do have a shortage of laboratories in South Africa, and as a SAPS, in addition to the plans that we had to increase the number of laboratories, we then have business coming on board to say we will look into increasing these laboratories, but also ensuring that they are equipped with state-of-the-art equipment. So yes, there are budgetary constraints, but we have a number of partners coming on board to say fighting crime is not just the government's responsibility. We are here. We have the resources. Let's see how we can work together.
Maybe just the last thing. I think if there's one thing amongst the many, many things of uncertainty in South Africa, and there are hundreds of things that we're not clear about, the one thing we're certain about is that crime is and has been out of control for many, many years, right? So one thing is the crime, and then, of course, the policing around that. As part of the summit, I would think even before you go forward, you do a diagnosis of like, what is it? Why have we not been able to get the grip on crime in, I won't even say 30 years, at least 20 years in our country? Has that come through?
The ministry has had a number of engagements internally, but also with external stakeholders, inclusive of community members. And we have taken on board what has been cited as challenges into effective policing. And if you look at the various commissions that have been centered around this summit, you will then see that they actually address these challenges that have actually been stated. For example, there is a commission that speaks to corruption and ethics, speaking to the integrity of police, which is fundamental for effective service delivery. And you also then have another one that speaks to the use of technology, and it basically has various other breakaway sessions where technology is then discussed in full to say, what do we need as South Africa? What type of technology do we need? How are we going to make sure that we use it effectively? So there are a few commissions that speak directly to what we have heard from communities, but also as the ministry, there are a few commissions that speak to our priorities that we have identified as being critical to ensuring that we actually get to this effective, efficient, responsive policing that we want.
Well, let's leave it at that. Kamogelo Mogotsi, I can tell you what, from a personal point of view, Kamogelo, nothing would please me greater, and I think my views resonate with the rest of the country on the National Pulse, if we can come back in a year's time and say, hold it, you know what, it's incredible what this country has done. We have stamped out crime to the point where it is like minuscule. Whatever the magic is, we've made it happen. I would be thrilled. That's the big challenge. So thank you for your time. Much appreciated. Let's get the news headlines now. Just go on 4:30.
Thank you, Ashraf. In the headlines this hour, President Cyril Ramaphosa has welcomed the involvement of technology in modernizing policing in the country. This came out at the opening of the SAPS 2025 Policing Summit in Kempton Park today. BOSA leader Musi Maimane says the party has identified savings of about 120 billion rand in the short to medium term that could offset the VAT increase proposal. This as political parties that voted in favor of the budget, fiscal framework and revenue proposals are set to meet tonight in a virtual meeting. And Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has appointed a new leader for the war-scarred Tigray region. This follows tensions between the factions within its main political party, the Tigray People's Liberation Front. Details at 5 with Greg House.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N3 southbound in Germiston is queuing towards Geldenhuys interchange. The N1 northbound in Midrand queuing towards Samrand Road. The M1 southbound has heavy traffic towards Omonde and Daspoort Tunnel in Pretoria, queuing at the tunnel. In KZN, the N2 northbound has a stationary truck before Umgeni Road. The N2 southbound has a stationary vehicle after Umgeni Road, and Bayhead Road westbound slow moving towards South Coast Road. In Cape Town, the N2 Nelson Mandela Boulevard outbound has a stationary vehicle reported at Hospital Bend. The N3 Philip Khasana Drive outbound queuing towards Hospital Bend, and on the N1 outbound there's a crash reported on the link to the R300 highway. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
I'll tell you what, Zai, more so in football than in any other sport, there's just as much attention paid on the future of the coach than the results of the team. And that's the case with Kaizer Chiefs, right?
Yeah, I think Chiefs are about to lose their chief, because that's what the headlines suggest. Their head coach, Nasruddin Nabi, he is now, well, the Tunisian tactician, catching the attention of North African heavyweights Esperance de Tunis, who are reportedly keen to lure him back to home. While Nabi remains committed to his 3-year contract at Chiefs, the club's inconsistent league form and upcoming Nedbank Cup semi-final against Mamelodi Sundowns have intensified the speculation. Chiefs currently sit 8th on the Premiership table with just 30 points from 24 games. Now let's go to more soccer news. Super clubs are said to be eyeing a transfer starlet, and that's Jeremy Monga. You may have seen his cameo as the second youngest ever Premier League debutant for Leicester, and this is Leicester's prospect. He didn't have the shirt sponsors that was missing in the Newcastle fixture. Leicester City youngster Monga, too young for alcohol and betting logos. Now his jersey gained much attention. That was last night. First of all, rules forbid him to sport the King Power team's Crypto Casino BC Game sponsor, and there's also another emblem appeared to be missing from his sleeve too. Obviously the 15-year-old can't partake. Now, Springbok fans can exhale. World Rugby confirming the bomb squad tactic will not be banned. The Springboks' famous strategy of loading the bench with power pack forwards, even the aggressive 7-1 split, is staying. While critics claimed it might pose safety concerns, World Rugby says the science doesn't back that up. Their medical review found no clear evidence that unleashing a squad of fresh forwards late in the game increases injury risk. So for Boks and their fans, a green light to keep blasting the opposition with their signature firepower. On to athletics. Former South African 200 meter champion Sinesipho Dambile is considering a move to the 4x400 meter relay team ahead of the World Senior Championships in Tokyo, Japan later this year. Now fully focused, Dambile is determined to earn a spot in the 4x400 meter squad, where he hopes to team up with top athletes like Lyth Pillay, Udem Okon and Zakita Nene. The 23-year-old sprinter Dambile, who clocked 10.3 seconds to finish 4th in the 100 meters at the Athletics South Africa Grand Prix Series 2 at the University of Johannesburg, is confident he can rediscover that form.
This one is a better one, to be honest. I've grown, I'm running more with experience, with also like being on the circuit a little bit, catching the guys there and there, picking up their brains. But now I'm more matured and definitely trying to have a great season for sure this year.
All right, let's move to this story. Finally, motorsport. The MotoGP champion Jorge Martin is set to make his Aprilia debut at this weekend's Qatar Grand Prix. If he passes a medical test, Martin, who won last year's MotoGP championship with Ducati, was sidelined after suffering multiple fractures in a crash during pre-season testing, and that required surgery. The Spaniard has missed the first 3 rounds of the season. In Martin's absence, Gresini Alex Marquez has taken a lead in the standing. His brother, Ducati's Marc Marquez, is in second place after winning 2 of the 3 rounds last month. And that's your sport.
Brain on this, let me pick your brain. So, you had the Sundowns coach, Rulani Mokoena. You mentioned it in the first bulletin, right? Then he moved on to Wydad Athletic Club in Morocco, right?
Yeah.
And now the story about 8 months without getting paid. I mean, how is that possible?
Right. And Pizzo was the same scenario.
Yeah, but how is that ever possible? Not 8 days.
You don't
8
pay me
months.
for 1 month and I'm gone. I'm not waiting 8 months. How? Yes. How?
So, do they have a chat every week? It's like, don't worry, next month, and then the season's over. It's like,
yes.
Okay, next season. I just find it bizarre because there's a contract in place. There are agents that put it together.
Yeah.
They sign off things, and how would clubs think they can get away with 8 months?
But why does it feel like it's mostly North African and the United Arab, that area clubs seem to be the problem children? Because you don't hear this from other clubs. I mean, Pep Guardiola not getting paid is not going to make headlines.
Well,
ever.
I mean, I don't know why, but I mean, you're quite right. It's just unacceptable. And here's the point. Forget what the coach thinks. Why is it that would not be a red card from the local federation, in this case, let's say Morocco, or CAF, within a month? It's immediate.
A red card and a red flag.
Yeah.
At the same time. Well, that's something they need to look into. And FIFA at some point needs to get involved.
Oh, that's their job.
That's their job. Someone's not doing their job.
More sports in an hour, right? FIFA and everything else too.
Sakina Kamwendo on SAFM.
It's an interesting time with regard to the Trump administration.
South Africa, 60%, 30%, and they've got some bad things going on in South Africa. We're paying them billions of dollars, and we cut the funding because a lot of bad things are happening in South Africa. The fake news ought to be looking at it. They don't want to report it.
Of course, everybody's doing a calculation and speculating on what could be included. The safest thing to do is to get confirmation from the US as to how they arrived at the number.
The African countries almost have to think of what I would call the coalition of the wounded, looking into various countries and saying who has been badly affected by the US and how can they open up the room for engagement on that.
Update at noon with Sakina Kamwendo, midday to 1 p.m. Update at noon with Sakina Kamwendo.
Thank you for tuning in to today's business feature, proudly sponsored by CFI, a leading trading app now available in South Africa. Download it now. Visit cfi.trade today.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Right, let's get to those numbers. Yesterday, big interest on the state of our rand. What about today? Paswane Mpatlele is with me, Senior Accounts Manager at Makwe Fund Managers. Good to connect as always. Let's start with what? The markets, locally and globally.
Yeah, let's look into those markets, Ashraf. Well, we're looking at a whole world markets that are basically rebounding higher, reversing recent losses as fears eases, but still heightened, though, at the back of the confidence around the fact that U.S. Secretary Treasury Bessent, who is viewed not completely hawkish on trade policy, is to head many of these trade negotiations with around 70 countries to find middle ground. Data is still weak, though, on the U.S. front, with small business optimism still on lows. Dollar on these developments, on these going negotiations, is relatively steady and more of a wait and see, while the risk on sentiment is reflected in the bond yields rising higher, reflecting investors are going into stocks, but it's also reflecting that it's raising towards its overbought levels, reflecting that we are heading to a CPI that has a high probability of having a declining and encouraging the likelihood of rate cuts that is being priced around 4 to 5. May might be the first one we get to see. These developments, South Africa is also benefiting from them. Further momentum is around the local political stability, around the GNU, the willingness to hold the resetting of talks stocks. Although on that reset impact, the rand is not reflecting any likeliness of that. But moving forward, we're looking at our financials helping us support in 3.7% gain. Industrials up 2%. Resources up 1%. Overall, JSE up 2.7% currently. Europe across all indices above 3% across the board. US also from the Dow to the S&P above 3.5%. Looking at the commodities, gold is rising from its lows up 0.9% at $3,010 an ounce. Oil attempts rebound at 0.9% at $64.90 a barrel. Yes, that rand is relatively stronger today, but still on levels that are not of liking. Rand against the dollar is at 19.50, rand against the euro at 21.28, rand against the pound 24.93. Ashraf.
Okay, perfect. We'll make a note of all of that and see how that plays out, not just today, but tomorrow as well. Much appreciate your time, Paswani. Right, we'll have another update, by the way, with regard to money, and listen to the market update with Jimmy Moyaha coming up from 6 to 7.
This business feature is sponsored by CFI, an authorized financial services provider, a global leader in online trading now available in South Africa. Visit cfi.trade today.
Hi, I'm Lewis Hamilton. Victory demands everything, but the journey is never solo. My team carves the way, data and innovation are my compass. This is how today's champions are made.
Trade like a champion with CFI. Access over 15,000 instruments, advanced trading tools, 24/7 support, and superior trading services. Visit CFI.trade today. CFI Financial Markets LLC is a Category 1 licensed broker by the UAE Securities and Commodities Authority. Trading involves high risk.
CFI, empower yourself.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
I must have many of the things that are sort of anomalies of the last few days. The one issue of the Afrikaans news not being played within the SABC TV news over the weekend was just one of those puzzling issues. And we know there was this outcry, uproar around like what has happened to the Afrikaans news, and different people bringing in their own, political interpretations into all of that. Now, the SABC's group CEO, Nomsa Shabele, well, she's clarified the position regarding what actually happened, and she spoke to the SABC News earlier today on this issue of the SABC News Afrikaans Bulletin. And the group CEO, very importantly, assured viewers that the Afrikaans news has not been discontinued. So the key word is it's not been discontinued.
Invitation for the SABC to be able to just give clarity to what transpired over the weekend. I think it's critical for me to reinstate that what's transpired was actually a scheduling error. It's the news team was on standby to actually go live with the bulletin. However, just before they went live, they realized when they were looking for the ad breaks that they were not on the schedule. And this is due to a miscommunication that took place internally regarding the scheduling of the Afrikaans bulletin itself. So it is not because the SABC was in any way deprioritizing Afrikaans over the weekend.
Mm-hmm. Now, there is a belief that the SABC was deliberately removing the Afrikaans content from its platforms, but you've just said this is not the issue.
No, this is not the issue. If this was deliberate, the news team wouldn't have been on standby, and they were on standby on Saturday to actually deliver the bulletin. This is an oversight. I think it's important for us to understand that the SABC is a public service media broadcaster. We are responsible for ensuring and protecting indigenous languages in South Africa, and it's a massive role that we play. If you look at just in terms of a public broadcast mandate of informing, educating, and entertaining South Africans. So this is a very important part, and Afrikaans, as per the ICASA quotas, when it comes to indigenous languages, is also, also plays a very important role there. So you've got the majority of indigenous languages that are spoken by the majority of South Africans, and then you've got the marginalized languages where Afrikaans tends to form part of that. But not in any way does the SABC consider Afrikaans not to be an important language. It's actually spoken. It's the third largest language in South Africa from a speaking perspective.
So, Nomsa, what is then management doing or going to do to avoid related incidents in the near future?
I think really the reality is that there will be consequence management, because something of this nature should never happen. Because we do have checks and balances to ensure that the schedule is watertight, and the schedule is the one place where, scheduling is actually where we make our revenues. And therefore, the schedule is something that as management we guard very jealously. But I think what's important as well is the fact that currently the perception is that the SABC doesn't care for a specific language, which is not the case, which is something that I must say. But at the same time, we must as SABC apologize to the South Africans that were negatively affected by the non-delivery of news. And I think what's important is to say that the news, obviously, we've got the news bulletin from Monday to Friday. We've also got the news bulletin from Saturday to Sunday. The one that was affected was just Saturday and Sunday. Monday to Friday, if you looked yesterday, it was actually on air. So what's important for management is to ensure that this episode is not repeated. But what's critical as well, I think, is more education internally in terms of the escalation of such occurrences, because genuinely the escalation did not take place. I think the team felt that they could manage it internally and ensure that, by Monday they're back up and running. But the most important thing is that it is a misunderstanding, and as management we are actually taking the responsibility and ensuring that it doesn't occur.
Okay, that's the SABC's Group CEO Nomsa Shabele. In fact, confirming what we all have been speculating about, and Nomsa Shabele making it very clear that no, whatever the issue around the scheduling that took place, the threat of of Afrikaans news being dropped from within the SABC news bouquet, well, that's not true. That's not going to happen. And in fact, they're back on air already. So there we are. Okay. Right. Let's get to your calls right after this.
Amidst misinformation and disinformation, where can we find reliable news? Turn to radio, your trusted source for truthful updates. For over 3 decades, we've upheld integrity as a signatory to the BCCSA Broadcasting Code of Conduct. Count on us for news you can trust. Say no to fake news. Radio, keeping it real since day one. A message from the National Association of Broadcasters. Tune in, trust, and stay informed.
WAFCON preparations continue as African champions Banyana Banyana meet again with the Scorchers in a thrilling pitch battle. This is the international friendly. Experience the beauty of African women's football. South Africa versus Malawi. This Tuesday, 8 April at 2:30 p.m. Live streaming on SABC Plus, SABC2, SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4, and at 3 p.m. on SABC radio stations. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
Right, I must say, lots of people commenting, not just on air live, but certainly tweeting as well, which is great. If you are tweeting, hashtag the National Pulse, tag SAFM Radio, tag me as well. I mean, one such tweet is coming from Khlalanati, saying, on the issue of criminality, one isn't sure if it's possible to man all streets, all townships and all villages in our country. Perhaps we need to relook at our system and see how. Okay, I think that's cut off there, but I think we get the point. Well, I mean, you're right, but there has to be a way. We cannot succumb to criminals deciding they're going to run the show, isn't it? Michael in Gqeberha, hello.
Actually, just a quick one on the GNU.
Yeah.
Look, you cannot impose VAT on goods, right? Basically, you're just saying to the poor, they must just suffer the more. That's basically what they are saying. And the DA cannot say, we are against the VAT, so we stand for the poor. No. The DA gave the ANC some demands. If the ANC had met those demands, they would have voted for the VAT hike. So they are not standing with the poor. So the whole lot, all of them, they are not for the poor, because if they were, they would have rather taken the part of a wealth tax, corporate tax, because these multinationals are taking billions out of the country through capital flights. That's where they must focus, and that's where they could tax them. That's where they can get the money.
Point made. Thanks for that short and sharp. Appreciate that call, Michael. Well, I mean, many may suggest, as per the Build One South Africa comment early on, that there's been issues just of absolute waste, not things that are budgeted and nothing allocated, then is not used, which is also ridiculous, quite honestly. And then, of course, the issues of corruption and just absolute wasted expenditure. And if we cut all that fat, is that the right word to use? We should be fine if we can do that. Imbawana in Mahikeng, go for it. Service delivery or the lack thereof.
Yes, good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon. Right, your point?
Yeah. You see, here in Northwest here, we got the issue of poor safety deliveries to extent of now we don't have buses that is running, transporting people and kids to school. And last time I was having the bus, the big bus, roadways, everything. I applied for the permit for the bus, not for scholar transport, but to transport everyone. It took me 8 months to get the permit. 8 months waiting for the bus to operate. But today, there's no any bus that is operating. So this is the problem of the people that are heading all these departments in Northwest.
Well, I mean, you're right. While there's a delay in service delivery, in this case here, there's a need, as you've just expressed, whether it's you or somebody else, there's an absolute need in that community. And I mean, that sort of breakdown there in Botswana of service delivery or service or no service delivery, really, that is so worrisome in our country. And to be very honest, it really doesn't matter which party or whether it's GNU out of it. They must deliver. I mean, that's what they're there for. You know, all their fancy tales. And they don't deliver. Just not acceptable. Imbawana, thank you for that call, right? Let's get to some of your WhatsApps. We did speak about crime. Here's a comment.
Hi, Ashraf. Good afternoon to you. Sorry to bust your bubble, but I don't see crime ever reducing to any significant level. Firstly, because of the structural adjustments that are reducing budgets. Those are IMF terms anyway. That are reducing budgets across departments, making it almost impossible for any police officer to do their job effectively. And secondly, I think the effect of apartheid goes far deep into our subconscious to where the black government are afraid. You know, they don't want to look anything like the apartheid government. And for that reason, they've gone to the far extreme of not punishing people for wrongdoing.
Well, I mean, you know, your point is interesting, and you touched on it before, and I've asked, how is it possible that all these
police vehicles in garages all over the country? Let's do less talk and more action. Let's start there. Police, they don't have enough vehicles. They have to wait for each other, to wait for a vehicle that has gone somewhere, must come back and then go and attend GBV, go and attend a crime scene with one vehicle. So let's start there. Let's not talk too much.
Let's not talk too much. Well, we need to talk, and there has got to be action. Point made. And as per that earlier comment as well, you know, I mean, there's no question. The fact that we've had increased crime in the last 30 years, it's just completely unacceptable. And why should any one of us tolerate it?
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Yeah, sure. Interesting listening to Fikile Mbulula speak now. And also to Bossa, who's saying that they are not going to support VAT and that they've brought alternatives. But you know what? A week ago, the ANC refused to listen to any of the alternatives of the DA and went behind the DA's back outside of the GNU. And now Fikile says there has to be rules and we don't govern alone. What a lot of hogwash and round the bush talking. Mark from Cape Town.
Thanks for that, Mark. I'll tell you what, I mean, one of the issues that's come up, because if they're saying, if Boza is saying, and Action SA is saying that we would support a plan provided there's no VAT increase, then it could be very similar to the DA. The point of difference, and this is what I've heard, is that the DAs, their conditions were outside straight financial conditions. That means the conditions were linked to other policy issues like expropriation, like the Bella Bill, like all of those things. And that's where the problem, that's where the breakdown has occurred. So they took one issue and they linked it to another issue and say, we'll support you on plan A, provided you relent on plan B, and that's where the problem is. So I think. Police are useless, says Anonymous. We have contacted the Minister of Police and everyone down the line with zero results. Plus minus 30 cases failed to prosecute, have disappeared, and nobody in the ranks of SAPS can find anything wrong. Willfully obstructing justice, refusing to take charge, refusal to act out on a warrant of arrest issued by a court. SAPS, SAPS are useless. Anonymous from Clan William in the Cedarburg region of the Western Cape. How similar is that to many of the other comments we've had? Yes, one about the names we touched on earlier.
Good afternoon, SFM. It's Mandla here in Busher Park. You know, along M1, M2, next to Selby Street, there's a street called Trump. I just wonder if that Trump is a relative to the Donald, Mr. Tariff Trump, the president of the US. I would like to know. ANC, Fikile Mbalula, as an individual, and some other members of the NEC or NWC will never let the DA go because they know what they pocketed. That's why DA keeps on saying it's a coalition, not a GNU. They will never let the DA go. Thank you.
They'll never let them go. And as you said, any relation to Donald Trump? I don't know. Maybe we should ask Donald Trump about that. But I mean, that road, Trump Street or Trump Road in the Selby Boysons area, if I heard you correctly, has been around forever, long before Donald Trump even existed. But maybe if we tell him, he may just do some more business with us. Just, hey, we've named a street after you. Wonga in the Eastern Cape, hello.
Hi, Ashraf. Good afternoon to you and your listener.
Good afternoon. Go for it.
First of all, let me start with the Trump. Anybody or any nation does give the money to wherever they want. And if Trump feels that it's time to take whatever the donation he is taking from the South African government, then he must do so because there's something that they have seen that is no longer fitting them to donate. Number two, Fikile Mbalula and the ANC must recall one thing. They never won elections. They are governing through other political parties that are in coalition with. They mustn't always use this word, GNU, this, GNU, that. This is a coalition. But now they are sugarcoating it as if they are the one that... They have lost touch with the people of South Africa. And from the 1st of May, based on what the Action SA has done, BOSA has done, UDM has done, people of South Africa will suffer the VAT consequences because of those parties that they sold out. Everybody is busy trying to blame the Democratic Alliance has stood firm with the people of South Africa that this framework automatically is going to be and something that is going to be implemented.
But Wonga, when you say stood firm, I mean, we've had reports, and it hasn't been refuted, to say actually their conditions initially of accepting the VAT increase was, we'll accept it, but if you can relent on the issues of other bills that were enacted into law recently, like the Bala Bill expropriation. So they were making a deal outside the literal increase of VAT into other issues. I mean,
yes, Ashraf, people are saying about it, they were making those deals, but has anyone seen the paperwork regarding that? I don't think so.
Well,
but everyone is trying to label the DA based on what they know the DA wants or the DA wanted. So that is a very, 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 very something that is shady, because if there's someone who can say, this is the paperwork that was produced to Kodongwane, to Mbalula, to Cyril Ramaphosa, with the demands of the DA, then maybe we can say something. But based on what they are lying about, trying to blackmail the DA, but at the bottom line, we as South Africans, because of those parties that assisted the ANC, that is misusing the money, we will be suffer that consequences
all right.
Because of them.
Thank you for that call, Wonga. Well, there you are. Once again, an example of the diversity of opinions. Therefore, when people say, you know what, everybody thinks the same way, that's it. It's not true. There's diversity. There's diversity within groups. There's diversity within people from the same communities. They have different views of political parties and what's been playing out in terms of in the country. Well, Thank goodness we have that. And what we do have is a complete freedom of expression, as you do here on the National Pulse. Let's get the news now. It's 5 o'clock. Here's Greg House.
Thank you, Ashraf. Technology key in modern policing, and BOSA identifies alternatives to a VAT hike. Good day to you. President Cyril Ramaphosa has welcomed the involvement of technology in modernizing policing in the country. He was speaking at the opening of the SA Police Service 2025 Policing Summit in Kempton Park, east of Johannesburg. He says technology allows for additional support on the ground.
We therefore welcome the focus of this summit on exploring the role of technology in modern policing, in investigation, as well as intelligence. Technology is particularly crucial when analyzing crime trends and patterns. It is also valuable in empowering citizens, as I saw in Soweto just this past week.
Build One SA leader Musi Maimane says the party's identified savings of about 120 billion rand in the short to medium term that could offset the VAT hike proposal. This as political parties that voted in favour of the budget fiscal framework and revenue proposals are set to meet tonight in a virtual meeting. The meeting's been called by the ANC Chief Whip in Parliament to consider proposals for other revenue generation measures to offset the increase in VAT from next month. Maimane elaborates.
A 2% efficiency cut for bloated provincial bureaucracies will deliver a savings of 15.3 billion rand. If we rationalize our diplomatic missions and cut VIP protection for politicians, we could be able to get round to about a 3 billion rand savings. If we downsize in the medium term the size of the cabinet and eliminate deputy ministers' positions, which is something we've always held, you will find a 3.9 billion rand savings into that. If you merge duplicative marketing agencies into a single trade and branding entity, that will bring us to about 5 billion rand savings.
The embattled mayor of the Mohokare municipality in the Free State, Singisa Mkhawuli, has been removed as mayor. The ANC in the province says the decision comes after service delivery considerations in municipalities. The area has experienced a series of service delivery challenges. ANC Free State spokesperson Thabo Miko.
The ANC took a decision that the mayor of Mohokare municipality, Comrade Singiso, must be redeployed. It's a decision that the ANC will carefully implement so that we don't destabilize the municipality. We took it against the background of understanding governance issues from the point of view of collective leadership, that the mayor works together with councillors and everybody else, including administration.
A woman in the Eastern Cape is in hiding after she was brutally attacked with a panga by her boyfriend. The victim alleges the incident happened after reporting the suspect to correctional services as he's out on parole. According to the victim, prison wardens fetched him but later told the woman the man had escaped. He then came back and allegedly attacked her.
When I arrived where I was hiding under the bed, I looked for correctional services number in Elliot Dale and called them. They sent 2 prison wardens. They came and took him. After 10 minutes, they came back telling me that he ran away. I asked them, how can a person who threatened to kill me escape from them? They told me that they will go and search for him in town. Within 5 minutes, he came back and started attacking me with a machete.
Meanwhile, police spokesperson Majolan Kokli says they are investigating the case.
Police can confirm that they are investigating a case of assault with intent to do grievous bodily harm following the alleged assault of a 37-year-old woman by her then boyfriend in January 2025. A criminal case was opened 2 months later. Police are hot on the heels of the suspect and his arrest is imminent.
Finally, Ethiopia's Prime Minister has appointed a new leader for the war-scarred Tigray region. The BBC's Kalkadanya Bertel has more.
Lieutenant General Taddesse Warrede commanded Tigrayan fighters during Ethiopia's civil war. Now he's been named as the new president of Tigray's interim administration, a post established as part of a peace deal that ended the 2 years of fighting. He takes over from Getachew Redda, who at times accused hardliners in Tigray region's main political party, the TPLF, of plotting to oust him.
Top story: President Ramaphosa's welcomed the involvement of technology in modernizing policing in the country. That's SAFM News. I'm Greg Gous.
And it's a very good evening to you. Welcome to SAFM Sports. We have Orlando Pirates in action today, and they are just 90 minutes away from proving themselves, and that's in the CAF Champions League action. Looking forward to it, and that's the semi-finals. They take on MC Alger at the Orlando Stadium. And looking at golf, we've got exciting news with the PGA rookie. South Africa's Tristan Loris will make his Masters debut this week. All the details around 5:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N1 southbound in Centurion queuing towards Brockfontein interchange. The N12 eastbound in Southgate has a stationary truck reported before the M1 highway. Solomon Mhlongo Drive eastbound in Pretoria is slow moving towards Rubenstein Drive. In KZN, the N3 eastbound has a stationary truck at Ashburton. The N2 southbound queuing towards the M41 gateway exit, and Old North Coast Road is closed just north of Columbine Place. In Cape Town, the N1 inbound queuing towards the M5 southbound off-ramp at Kuburg interchange. Hospital Bend outbound has a crash reported on the ramp to the M3 south at Hospital Bend, and Voortrekker Road in Goodwood slow moving at the N7 checks Hartwell Drive. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
When your business expands, it's time to look for the kind of space that'll offer it more than square meters on a plan. At Dube Tradeport, we're a place for high-value manufacturing, efficient air cargo logistics, and advanced future farming technology. Doesn't that sound like a place where your business can take shape? If so, move your business to Dube Tradeport and grow beyond potential.
EFC is live this Thursday. From the wilds of Reunion Island and the ancient lands of Zimbabwe, two raging bulls meet for a heavyweight title clash as Elvis Moyo takes on Anthony Morrell. Plus Fahis Jacobs and Sibusiso Sovendile fight for bantamweight gold. EFC 122, live from the World Sports Betting Arena. Watch it on SABC Sport Channel on DTT Channel 4 from 7 p.m. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
I wonder what you feel about it as a member of the audience, as a person living in South Africa, and to borrow a particularly South African phrase which just shows anger. It's not a swear word, it just shows you what you feel. When people say like I'm hurtful. Do you feel the same thing, that these endless debates between the different political parties over the GNU and the budget is just going on, and that's all they talk about, how they dislike the other party. So, I mean, do you feel as hurtful about that or not? But the flip side of that is, do you also feel that, we think that what's happening with the different political parties in South Africa is abnormal? In reality, in many political parties, on governments of the world, this is the most normal thing. They govern, they argue, they topple each other, they come back, they form a coalition, they argue, they throw each other out, and they shift musical chairs, and that's quite normal. I think the key parties, because many of them have a very good civil service, then they work in spite of who governs. Just a thought, and if you want to add your thoughts on that, feel free to do so. Right, let's talk further about the future of the GNU, the future of that, and the future of the budget, because all of that is so linked, isn't it? With me is Professor Dirk Coetzee, who's a political analyst from UNISA. Prof. Coetzee, appreciate your time as always. Thanks for connecting on the National Pulse. Prof. Coetzee, hello? Yeah, Prof, do I have you there? Okay, let's see. We'll try and connect with him in just a moment. But let me do this before we get to him. Now, the DA leader, John Steenhuisen, spoke to SABC News today at the back of the ANC press briefing. So, it's an interesting day. You had the ANC press briefing. You had BOSA, Build One South Africa, and their own briefing. You had a statement from Action SA, and you've also had a statement from the DA, and then you've had an interview by John Steenhuisen on SABC News, and it just shows you there's knee-jerk reactions across the board, perhaps as they should do, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to chat to Professor Dirk Coetzee in a moment, but first things first, let's play. It's about a 3-minute clip that I think sums up the latest DA position as per John Steenhuisen.
Well, let me just say this. We joined the Government of National Unity to be part of the jobs and growth agenda in the country, and it's very important that it's very clear that is why we joined. But it has to be done so on the basis of a genuine power sharing where all parties accept that none of us received a majority, none of us can get everything we want, but we all should be able to get some of what we want. And I think it is important that we find a way through this. We're certainly not just going to walk away from the GNU, but we also can't just remain in a situation where we are not privy to a genuine power-sharing relationship, given the fact that we do bring 22% of the vote to this, and we helped get President Ramaphosa elected. We're not the ones who went outside of the GNU. Not once, not ever, during the course of the last few weeks, has the Democratic Alliance met, spoken to, engaged with any single party outside of the Government of National Unity. Because we are committed to the statement of intent, we're committed to working together with GNU partners. Now, the same can't be said of the ANC. They went outside of the GNU to deal with parties that are not privy to the statement of intent. So if any party has to find itself outside of the GNU, it's not the Democratic Alliance, it's the African National Congress. What we now need to do is find a way through this particular impasse and find a situation where we can pass the budget. Now, a lot of people are under this false impression that what we voted on a week ago in Parliament was the budget. It wasn't. It was the fiscal framework. The budget still has to come to Parliament. And it's very important that we try before then to find each other, to agree that we have a power-sharing relationship, and agree on a common set of reforms that we're going to need to get the country moving forward. Because without those reforms, we're going to be back here fighting about how much tax has got to go up, how much cutting we've got to do, or how much we've got to borrow. And that's not the way to run a government.
On that point, what have discussions between the ANC and the DA been like the last few days? And are there any meetings planned for the near future?
Well, during the course of the last week, we have exchanged a document with the ANC. On the basis that there was a document that had been provided to us. We had responded. We're waiting to hear back from that particular document still. I note the press conference just given by the Secretary General of the African National Congress, in which he said they're going to be engaging with parties. We'll wait for the call. We think we've got a great plan to grow the economy and create jobs that is in line with the medium-term development plan and, in fact, in line with much of the things the ANC say they stand for. So we look forward to discussing that particular plan so that we can move forward to a situation where we can pass the budget later this month and into the next month, the DORA, the Taxation Laws Amendment Bill, and all these other instruments of legislation. We were very consistent from the beginning about our position on VAT. It was no secret within the GNU. But again, I reiterate, we never once took that outside to speak to any other party to try and cajole them into voting with us in a particular way. The only people we consistently spoke to during this process were the parties within the Government of National Unity.
Okay, and that is the voice of the DA leader, John Steenhuisen, repeating more than once that, in fact, they did not speak to anybody outside the GNU. How significant is that? Now we have Professor Dirk Coetzee with us. Prof. Coetzee, appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us on the National Pulse. Prof. Coetzee, let's see if we can reconnect with you. For some reason, we are struggling to connect with Professor Coetzee. Yeah, I've got you there now. Okay, hello. I'm glad you can hear us. I can certainly hear you. Thank you for your time. Prof. Coetzee, hello? Are you able to hear me?
Hello?
Yes, can you hear me? Okay. Clearly he cannot. Let's reconnect on that side. It just gives me an opportunity in the meantime. Let me just pick out some of your WhatsApp comments as well, right? And here's a question about crime that I think is worth repeating.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. I know you well. It's Lucky from Paarl in the Western Cape. Isn't it interesting? I heard you just saying when you were talking about crime, you say it increased tremendously in the last 30 years. And who's been the ruling party in the last 30 years? So where should the blame go? That party with the green, yellow and gold should take accountability for that, because we took over from the apartheid government, and then we say crime has risen to those levels. Now who's to blame? Apartheid? I know where the blame should go. Have a nice day, Ashraf.
Thank you for that. But I tell you what, I mean, apartheid is apartheid, and that's horrible, and that's an absolute crime against humanity, a different sort of crime, right? But in terms of the now, I mean, you can't really look beyond the governing party up to now, because they are the party in charge. So how then do you blame somebody else for that? Especially when we're not talking about 1 or 2 years, we're talking about 30 years plus, right? Okay, let's get now Professor Dirk Coetzee. We have you there, right?
Yes, good afternoon.
Okay, thank goodness for that. Let's pick up firstly with John Steenhuisen repeating more than once that the DA never spoke outside of the GNU in terms of finding a solution regarding the issue of the budget and VAT, right? I mean, A, do you think that's true? And maybe link that up to now the oft-repeated comment from the ANC that, in fact, the DA put together conditions that are well beyond just VAT or no VAT. The conditions required shifts in terms of the law, in terms of the bills that were passed recently. I mean, which one of that is true?
Well, this is a tricky question, because I guess both are true. But the question is whether that is actually relevant for the situation. Because in the case of the ANC, they were looking for votes anywhere in order to be able to pass it. For the DA, they were using this opportunity in order to be able to see to what extent they can rectify the matters that he referred to also in his interview, that they believe is not yet the rules of the game in the government of national unity. So the situation was in a sense used by both in order to see how they can maximize their own interest and reach the objectives that they wanted to have in mind. But I don't think this is the issue to talk about now.
Why would you think it's not the issue? Because for many people, it's precisely the issue. That is why John Steenhuisen can repeat it more than once, effectively to show up how his partner, the ANC, are not dealing open cards on the one hand, and the ANC are bringing it up to say, well, that's how the DA is not playing open cards, and they're doing that to discredit one another. And linked to that effort of discrediting is the key factor of trying to strike a deal. So they're negotiating hardball here, aren't they?
No, I think this is exactly my point. They are past this point of accusing each other. If they continue with that, then there's no hope that they can talk with each other. This is part of what brought them to the point where they are now, which looks like they are willing to talk with each other again. This is, seems to me, what is the message from the National Working Committee meeting, and that Fikile Mbalula conveyed to the public today, is that they have time to talk with the DA. The DA is saying, and just this interview that you have now with John Steenhuisen, of saying they are also willing to talk. So this is where the real engagement and the negotiations will have to start now. If they go back to these issues, there's no hope of an agreement or of reaching each other. And it's not the way in which negotiations should happen. It's not a constructive way of negotiating.
So if they are both talking to each other, and I think Fikile Mbalula made the point about a reset, John Steenhuisen effectively spoke, and I'm paraphrasing here, spoke about not so much a GNU, but, I need to get the right word, sort of a coalition of support to come together. Both are effectively pushing in the same direction in terms of what they're articulating publicly, right? But it's going to take more than just that to be able to strike a deal. What do you think, therefore, is needed to strike a deal?
Well, first of all, they have to come to an agreement to say this, what has happened now should be history. It's not something that they must dwell on in order to score points from each side, but that they must now develop a new relationship which will be more constructive, that when there's issues in the future, and there will be issues again, that they will be able to approach it in a way in which it doesn't lead to the same situation as now, which means that the practices, the procedures, the way of relating to each other in the government of national unity must be clarified. It must become much clearer than what it is now. The reason why it is where it is because they never had the opportunity really to negotiate that. We all know that they had very little time after the election to establish the government of national unity, and since then they started being government. And they didn't have really the time to say, well, and there were some red lights already, or maybe yellow lights, and that is the different legislation, the Bella Act, the Expropriation Act, the National Health Insurance. All of them said, here are issues that must be resolved, that there's more of a common understanding. Now the budget actually pushed it to the
let's
limit.
put that on hold. I want to know, if there's issues to be resolved, what are the issues? How do they actually get that to fix, to work? We'll do that in a moment.
WAFCON preparations continue as African champions Banyana Banyana meet again with the Scorchers in a thrilling pitch battle. This is the international friendly. Experience the beauty of African women's football. South Africa versus Malawi. This Tuesday, 8 April at 2:30 p.m. Live streaming on SABC Plus, SABC2, SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4, and at 3 p.m. on SABC radio stations. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
X at SFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
We're going to chat in a moment or so about a situation where Section 27 secures a 38,000 Rand maintenance order for a learner impregnated by an educator. Another horrific story. We'll come to that in a moment. Let's go back to Professor Dirk Coetzee. So how then, in terms of where we are and how polarized they've been, but you made the point today that in fact there's a commitment to wanting to talk. How do they move from talking to actual agreement? I mean, in your opinion, what would be the deal that will stick?
Well, first of all, they can't reach an agreement immediately. So to say within 5 days or so, that's unrealistic. So they will have to come together and say, what are the issues that are at the moment making it difficult for us to cooperate? And it starts with that they must be able to recognize the integrity of each other. That they don't say, talk in public about, in negative terms about each other. Yes, there are different political parties. They have different constituencies. But that's part of it, of how they must come to an agreement of what the party can do on the one hand, and that means what Fikile Mbalula and Alan Zille can do, representing the different parties, and what is the focus area of government, and how should they act when they are part of government. Then it must come to issues about consultation. What does John Steenhuisen talks about power sharing. President Ramaphosa and others from the ANC said, well, we are the biggest party. They have to resolve that matter of what is the power relationship or the status relationship between the different parties, but especially the two. When is it necessary to consult? When is it possible that the president can take a decision on his own? When is it, how should, therefore, the cabinet relationships be structured so that it can accommodate all the different parties, but especially the two big ones.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, let's leave it at that. There's lots to consider, Professor Dirk Coetzee. I'm sure we're going to talk sometime soon around that issue. But here's the point. Let's stay with this issue of power sharing, which is a phrase used today by John Steenhuisen, which is a very different one from being part of the GNU or a coalition, right? And my sense is possible, just possible, that, there was this mad rush to elect a president and to reach an agreement like a few weeks after the election, I think like 2 weeks or so thereafter, right? This crazy rush. That in doing so, that a lot of, they didn't cross their T's and dot their I's. We could have now a situation in what Mbalula made the point of this reset. You almost have to renegotiate the terms of the GNU once again. And that could happen now. Do you think so? We'll see what happens. Let's talk about Section 27 and an educator in a moment.
You're listening to the National Pulse.
Right, a really disturbing story, but maybe some good news to a degree coming out of it. The Nkomazi Magistrates Court has ordered a former Mpumalanga teacher who sexually assaulted a learner to pay 38,000 rands in maintenance over the next 2 years, right? Let's find out more about it in terms of what the story is and how we got to this position with Zenith Suji, who's the head of education at Section 27. Zenith, appreciate your time. You're on the National Pulse.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me, Ashraf.
Thank you. I mean, this just sounds like one of those horrific stories that we hear about every second day, don't we?
Yes, definitely. GBV in this country has just, as it's been termed, it's a second pandemic. This is one of those most devastating stories where this young learner was impregnated by an educator. And when we consulted with her, she comes from a very impoverished family and looked for assistance. At that point, the South African Council for Educators were already investigating him because he had entered into numerous relationships with other learners at the school as well. And when, we had to look for some kind of recourse, she had this little 1-month-old baby at the time. And we needed to make sure that this child was going to be supported. So we approached the court in Nkomazi, the Nkomazi Magistrates Court, for maintenance to ensure that this child will be supported and that she'll have some kind of financial backing.
Okay, and that approach has now resulted in an actual court order, right?
Yes, so this the actual court order was handed down in April of 2023 when we got the magistrates, when we got the maintenance order. What has transpired since then is that the SACE investigation concluded in January of 2025, where they found him to be guilty of sexual assault and of sexual misconduct, and had him and ordered that he be struck off the roll. And subsequent to that finding, the educator contacted our client and said that he's no longer going to pay. He's lost his job, and she cannot expect anything further. So we had to go urgently. We had to approach the court to make sure that because he's a government employee, he's entitled to a pension fund, and he's got one. So in terms of the Maintenance Act, if a party defaults with the maintenance, we can interdict his pension fund. So this is exactly what we did. And on the 3rd of April, that was last week, the Magistrates Court ordered that 38,000 rand of his pension fund be interdicted to assist her over the 2 years.
Okay, so, I mean, that's the key part. Over 2 years, which, is not even 1,500 rands a month over 2 years. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
So this was in line with the Magistrates Court order in 2023, where where the court ordered 1,500 rand per month of maintenance and 500 rand in addition every June and December for additional clothing for the child. So the 2 years might not be sufficient, but obviously after the 2 years, we need to go back and reassess, and the court needs to then look at the change in circumstances, whether he's found another job, just to ensure. So that we can do in 2 years. But for now, this will at least give her some kind of buffer and support over the next couple of months.
Okay, how is she? How is this learner who's now a mother? How is she feeling? What is she saying? What can you tell us?
Our client has been, she's really grateful for the assistance. She did not know her rights, and this goes into the bigger systemic issues that we face, where we know that many of these learners don't know how to access justice, to know what their rights are. So in this way, she's really she's really grateful to at least be given some kind of financial support. She lives with her parents are pensioners. She comes from a very impoverished family. So this actually would assist her to look after her child. In terms of the broader educational and the fact that SACE has now struck him off, she's also grateful for that, because she said that, in circumstances and in schools like where you have very impoverished schools, what you do find is that these educators actually do take advantage of young learners, and they use money because they know that that's their only, that young girls coming from poor families are going to be, that they would fall for those kind of, if money is given to them, it's kind of a temptation to actually enter into it.
Financial carrot or
yes.
incentive, yeah.
It's an incentive.
Right.
So in that way, she didn't, she was really, where she said to us that, she's actually become so much more aware of how this could have worked, and she's really grateful that we were able to assist her.
And just the last thing, Zenith, I mean, part of this, besides the settlement now, is at one stage, I understand the learner was pressured into terminating pregnancy by ingesting rat poison. I mean, so who did that? What is the outcome of that?
Sure. So this actually happened before this pregnancy. Yeah. So a year before she fell pregnant. So this was in 2021, where she fell pregnant for the first time, and with the same educator. And he then said, no, she can't keep trace of the fact that he entered into this relationship with her. She needs to terminate this pregnancy. And instead of taking her to a clinic to terminate the pregnancy, he forced her to ingest rat poison, so that it was quite life-threatening. She had to be taken to the clinic, and thankfully she survived that. But obviously the pregnancy was terminated, and then a year later she fell pregnant again, and then he wanted her to ingest the rat poison again, but this time she refused, and and she went along with she kept the child, gave birth, and at that same time, SACE found out about this educator, because I think there was a complaint lodged by the school actually to SACE, right. And that's how things.
Sure, horrific
ended.
Story, but at least some degree of good news at the very end of it all. Zenith Suji, appreciate your time. Head of Education at Section 27, and I think the big issue for all of us to consider is these are the people that teach our children. Let's get the news headlines. Here's Greg Hoss.
Thank you. In the headlines, the ANC Secretary-General says the DA will be replaced if it decides to leave the GNU. President Ramaphosa's welcomed the involvement of technology in modernizing policing in the country, and China has reacted with belligerence to threats by the US president to raise tariffs on its imports to more than 100%, saying it'll fight to the end. There's a full update at 6 o'clock.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N1 southbound in Pretoria is a stationary track before Rigel Avenue, and the N3 southbound in Germiston has a crash after Van Buren Road. In KZN, the N2 northbound has a stationary track before Umgeni Road, and the N2 southbound a stationary vehicle after Umgeni Road. In Cape Town, the N2 outbound has a crash before Victoria Street in Somerset West, and the M5 southbound queuing towards Racecourse Road. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Right, Zai. Let's Zai in for Tumi. Zai, let's talk soccer. Let's talk Mamelodi Sundowns.
Well, I just have to say there was a couple of sharp ears from our listeners. I got ahead of myself. Pirates are playing tomorrow. Sundowns tonight.
Oh, I see. Okay. All right.
Sundowns in action this evening in Tunisia. That's where we'll start. It's a crucial CAF Champions League quarterfinal second leg against Esperance Sportive de Tunis. The Brazilians carry a narrow 1-0 lead from the first leg thanks to Peter Shalulila's strike in Pretoria. Kickoff is at 9 p.m. and with a place in the semi-finals up for grabs, catch the action live on SABC Sport. Now, Orlando Pirates are 90 minutes away from a return to the CAF Champions League semi-finals for the first time in over a decade. Coach Jose Rivero will leave the club at the end of the season. He's downplayed the need for beautiful football, saying tomorrow night is about grit over glamour. The Buccaneers carry a slender 1-0 lead into their second leg clash against MC Alger at Orlando Stadium. Mohamed Kota's crucial away goal has given the Sea Robbers the advantage. Rivero insisting they will dig deep, adapt and stay laser focused. Kickoff is at 6 p.m. tomorrow. Also, you can catch it live on SABC Sport. Now, Kaizer Chiefs, their head coach Nasruddin Nabi making headlines across the continent. The Tunisian tactician has caught the attention of North African heavyweights Esperance de Tunis, who are reportedly keen to lure him back home. While Nabi remains committed to his 3-year contract at Chiefs, the club's inconsistent league form and upcoming Nedbank Cup semi-final against Mamelodi Sundowns have intensified the speculation. Chiefs currently sit 8th on the Premiership table with just 30 points from 12 games. Now, elsewhere, Kevin De Bruyne is set to leave Manchester City when his contract expires this summer. Now, the Belgian playmaker has helped City to 6 Premier League titles and the Champions League since signing in 2015. The 33-year-old said in a statement on X that he will be saying goodbye to Manchester in the coming months. And finally, golf. It's the Masters Week at Augusta, and South Africa will be proudly represented by a trio of talent hunting for the famous green jacket. Charles Schwartzel, the 2011 champion, heads into his 15th Masters, boosted by a second-place finish at Live Miami, and looking to bounce back after missing last year's cut. Christian Bezuidenhout, ranked 57th globally, carries local hopes as the best-ranked South African in the field, and it's a special debut for PGA rookie Tristan Lawrence, who joins the elite list of South Africans to play at Augusta National. The competition tees off, that's tomorrow, with the defending champion Scottie Scheffler and Rory McIlroy tipped as favourites. And that's the sport.
And I mean, we've got more sharp ears listeners here to say, please mention the fact that Banyana beat Malawi by 2-1 in that friendly match, and you must mention it or else, right? So I mentioned it. You know that. And the other one from these sharp ears to say, please mention that my team are playing in the European Champions League tonight, and that's Arsenal, not my team, that person's team, against Real Madrid. And I know Sundowns are playing and Pirates are playing, but please mention it. So, we have to mention it. It's a big game, so you know that.
There you know. Now you know. Thanks, Ashraf. There's the sport. I'll catch you tomorrow. That's on the Morning Brief. I'm Zai Khan.
The Market Update, Monday to Thursday, 6 to 7 p.m.
Want to stay ahead of the financial game? Join us tonight from 6 to 7 p.m. for an insightful journey through the day's market developments, financial updates, and investment news. Tune in for your daily dose of financial intelligence as we navigate the twists and turns of the financial landscape with expert insights. Only on the SAFM Market Update.
SAFM Market Update with Jimmy Muyaha.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
You know, Jimmy, everything affects business. If it's not Donald Trump and the RAN and the type of laws we create or don't create, I don't know. There's also an issue of the South African automotive sector. Tell me about that and the impact it's having on business.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Good afternoon to the listeners. Yes, we've seen a couple of changes happen in the automotive space. We've seen the likes of Volvo announce that they are closing down some of their dealerships here. We've seen the likes of BMW announce that they're reducing their pricing in South Africa. We've even seen the likes of some new Chinese manufacturing companies, automotive companies in particular, saying that they're going to enter South African markets. So I thought we'd take a look at the automotive landscape and see what some of these changes look like and how we make sense of those changes. We're going to see if we can get a better understanding of where we are at the moment, particularly following that automotive tariff from the US, and if it will have a significant bearing from an impact perspective on our own local markets. We're also going to keep with the motoring theme and take a look at a very interesting proposal or suggestion that we should scrap driver's licenses entirely, the physical driver's license cards, that is. There's a proposal towards alternative licensing methods, both for the driver's license and, interestingly enough, for the vehicle licenses as well. So we're going to look at that and see what the merits are around that. I think there are some very interesting opinions on either side of that conversation, and we obviously know that we've had some issues with our own licensing machine and how it has broken down in the past and how we've been looking to replace that. So maybe this is the right time to have that conversation. We've also got a conversation around the foreign direct investments in South Africa and on the African continent. We're going to look at the FDI landscape in emerging markets and see where South Africa sits in terms of attractiveness of direct investments. And we're going to wrap the show up with a conversation with the Minister of Agriculture, John Steenhuisen, around some of the alternative low-hanging fruit that we might be able to exploit in the agricultural space when it relates to replacing AGOA. We know that AGOA is set to be looked at in September, and there's a potential that South Africa might not be renewed, or we might not be able to stay in the AGOA agreement. And Minister Steenhuisen mentioned this in Parliament a couple of days ago around the fact that we kind of need to be prepared in the event that that is the situation. He doesn't fully believe that we would be kept in the AGOA agreement. And as part of our agri feature, I thought we'd take a look at that and see what it means for the world of agriculture and where other markets or other potential markets could potentially be popping up from. Before we get to all of that, let me give you a sense of the day's market movements. It was a better day today than it has been in recent times. We've gone through quite a bit of volatility, but today was an all-round good day across the board for all the markets. All the markets were in the green following yesterday's exceptional red day. Asian markets all in the green as well. The biggest gainer there was the Nikkei 6% up. Of course, they were down significantly yesterday, so it could just be a bit of a retracement there. The ASX in Sydney 2.2% up. The Hang Seng Hong Kong index was only up 1.4% after losing about 13% yesterday. European markets were all in the green, north of 2% each, with the biggest gainer there being the FTSE, close to 3% up on the day. US markets are up at the moment, 2% up in the case of the S&P, 2.3% in the case of the Nasdaq. South African markets also had a good day. Financials up almost 4%, industrials up almost 2%, and resources up 1.2%. The all shares up 2.5%. The top 40 was up 2.3%. A lot of retracement and a lot of rationality seems to be returning to the markets. So a much more stable day than what we've seen over the last kind of 2 days of volatility. Platinum and palladium pricing still under pressure. Palladium back below $900 now at $888 an ounce. Brent crude price $64.33 a barrel. Gold price kind of not really moving, bit of movement and volatility, but settling back at $3,009 a fine ounce at the moment. The rand against the dollar, 19 rand and 52 cents, better than the 1961 that we saw yesterday. 1 British pound will cost you 24 rand 93, still less than 25 rand, but still too high. And 1 euro will cost you 21 rand and 30 cents. 1 Australian dollar, 11 rand and 76. 1 Bitcoin, still 78,700 odd dollars a Bitcoin, around 1.53 million rand there. So we're going to look at these movements when we come back a little later on, and we're going to take a look at what some of the driving factors could be, particularly around the rationality of the stock markets in relation to what's been happening around the world. I've got Chantal Marks from FNB Wealth and Investments joining me to take a look at market movements for today. But for now, Ashraf, back to you.
Okay, perfect. And by the way, when you said John Steenhuisen, Minister of Agriculture, I'm like, is he the Minister of Agriculture? Because all my mind is leader of the DA. You know, we tend to forget about his other responsibilities, right? Thanks for your time. Enjoy your show, 6 to 7. And by the way, Tumi hosting the sports show once again, as I think she's doing all month from 7 to 8 p.m. And she'll give you an update in terms of her own analysis in that Banyana game against Malawi, because she was there covering the game for SABC Sport. Right, so what's important now is Be a Sport. Let's get your calls. I want to get a sense of what you're thinking as you put your own fingers on the pulse.
This summer, SABC brings us together anytime, anywhere. Catch all the drama, entertainment, and sport on SABC TV. Turn up the volume with your favorite hits and shows on SABC Radio. Stream wherever you are with SABC Plus and join the fun at unmissable SABC events near you. From breaking news to moments that move us, SABC is your companion for every summer memory. Celebrate a summer of togetherness with SABC, your home for connection, entertainment, and inspiration. X at SAFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
Okay, lots to consider. So you can talk about some of the sporting issues. You can talk about the street names that I mentioned earlier in terms of, how much do you know about the people that the streets are named after, past and present? Do you seriously know them? Do you make an effort to do that? How do we popularize the fact that once the street is named after that person, we best know who we're talking about? And I must tell you, I don't know enough about the streets that I drive on regularly. Of course, the GNU, lots of takes on that. The Action SA point of view, the Build One South Africa's point of view. Action, again, also making the point that if there's no deal regarding no VAT, they will be out and they will not be part of any GNU. They may even consider GNU only if there's no increase in VAT. And, of course, you heard the ANC position about a reset. And certainly from a DA point of view, they certainly want to relook at what they have right now. I'm talking about new power sharing, which is a new phrase I haven't heard in a long time. Let's get your thoughts now. We go to Springfontein first up. We got Muzibin Korsi talking to us about business and politics. I could talk about it all day long. Go for it.
Hi, Ashraf. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very good indeed. Go for it. What's your point?
My point is that what happened over the weekend, it was just a big foray from the point of government and the politics. Ne? My point is the BUSA, the business unity, wrote to the DA and ANC, or DA and ANC, yes, about the importance of the GNU. And then the president comes out, or the ANC comes out and says they will not be dictated to by any business. But my point is, when the politicians want funding, they go to business.
True.
And when the all political parties basically are funded by business. So when these politicians now come out and say no, and BUSA try to sugarcoat their statement and said no, it was just this statement or this letter was supposed to be a private letter to the two political parties, and they don't want to dictate to the political parties. But what I don't understand is, if that was if that explanation is genuine, why did they not write to all political parties who are involved in the GNU? So my point is that the business, in fact, is controlling our political parties from the back. But now it's like it's exposed because they're saying those letters were supposed to be private.
Yeah, I hear you. Okay, let's move on. I think the big issue that you're talking about is what power should business have in determining the policies of government. And you know, not just in this country, but around the world, that government's parties don't survive without business funding, for example, or influence. And the flip side of that is that government can't govern on their... No, let me say that again. Government can't govern on their own. That is why they get so much support from business. You may have heard even earlier on regarding the policing, to say business once again will come forth and effectively support government's plans around policing. So I hear you, and I will leave it at that, because I'd like to get further comments from other people about it. You know, is that an unholy relationship between business and politics? And again, how much is business influencing the GNU as they may have done in the past? Thanks for that call. Gets me thinking, certainly. Chief in Cape Town, hello.
Good day to you, sir. Thank you for taking my call.
Thank you. Go for it.
Most of what I wanted to say, you played it, okay, before you called, is it Professor Kotse?
Yes.
Yeah, yes, about the DA. Because your last caller before the 5 o'clock news, I think it was Wonga or Bonga.
Yeah,
you said
Wonga,
something. Yeah, you said something, and then you commented on that. Not wrongfully, okay? You were fair, and then there was what Bonga or Wonga said is in line with what Stephen explained, because Stephen challenged the presenter and anybody in the country who could table a document that they did blah blah blah, everything that Mbalula said, accused the DA of. But my interest, Ashraf, is this: when he said there was no budget, which is what this Ola Baloo is all about. He said there was no budget discussed last week. It was a fiscal report, something like that. The budget is still coming in about a month's time.
Yeah, but that's just a play on words. I mean, I understand that, but I mean, that's just a prelude to what's going to happen next. So they're completely linked. I mean, they are linked, okay? Can we leave it at that, Chief? I got your points. Thank you for that. I want to move on to get as many calls and WhatsApp comments as well. And for those that can't, they are tweeting. I see that. If I get a chance, I'll read them. If I can't, at least we'll share them as well with your comments, right? Okay, Mklongo in KZN. Your thoughts? Hello.
Hey, Ashraf. I think the DA compromised themselves. I think their strategy was very poor. First, they opposed the budget, and it sounds very noble. Then we discovered that actually they wanted to create a platform to attempt a reversal of progressive policies, Bilabel and all that and so on. Now, if you look at it now after that, you would have expected that the DA would have located the budget. And this would have been in the cabinet side and the PACs, which is what they've always been complaining about as opposition parties. What do you think about it? And when they're not coming up from that angle because they are beneficiaries currently.
Okay, I hear you. Look, it's very complex. They also want to all stay in positions of power. Once you, like, for example, the DA, including, for example, the Patriotic Alliance with Gayton McKenzie. You know what's happened, and to a large degree, even other parties like Al Jama and others. What the GNU has given them is something I've said so before. They have a shop window to show us how they govern, and the better they govern in their own departments, the more convincing they are when they speak to you and I come election time, local government, and then the national, to say, hold it, you can see what we do. Come on, man, give us a chance. And I think if they lose that leverage, they're on the outside. It's like this, you can't play a game of rugby without being on the pitch. You have to be on the field of play. Think about that. This is the National Pulse.
Night Talk with Oliver Dixon.
When leaders need to account, we call on them. When society needs to debate, reflect, and advance, we're here to have the conversation. Join me, Oliver Dixon, on Night Talk every Monday to Thursday from 10 to 12 midnight.
Right. I tell you what, if you're a first-time caller, I certainly want to know about it as well, because otherwise I'm just going to miss the opportunity of saying welcome to the show. I'd love to do just that, right? So just a reminder, if that is the case for you, then please tell me about it, right? Okay. In the meantime, let me just tell you as well, right, that smart... In fact, we'll get to that right after this.
Ashraf Garda on the National Pulse.
Okay. By the way, Smart SME by Santam is insurance that offers flexible solutions for your business, because every small business has different needs. It's the on-the-go insurance that covers it all. Your offices, stock, and more. We cover the all in small business. Visit santam.coza or SMS Smart SME to 34852 to get a quote. Santam, this is freedom.
You're listening to the National Pulse.
Okay, let's get to further comments, right? Maxwell in Polokwane, go for it.
Hi, Ashraf, how are you?
I'm good indeed. Good to talk to you. Thank you.
I think there are a couple of points that we know as a matter of fact. One is that the ANC was open to practical engagement. However, the DA brought in other irrelevant issues to the table. And this was said not only by the ANC, but also other members of the GNU.
Yes.
This would be your BELA, this would be your NHI.
Mm-hmm.
But we also know that other parties in the GNU were engaged, hence most of them voted for the fiscal framework, which we'll now know would be the budget in a few months' time or a few weeks' time. But also, engaging other parties came when the DA held the nation ransom. What do I mean? That the DA would say to the ANC, do not engage any other party outside of the GNU. They know that this matter will hang, and thus the state will be at ransom, or the people of the country will be at ransom. But we also know that it is usual practice in government where there is no outright majority for people who will be voting for the budget to be engaged. In the US, Congress is engaged, and they have to do a little bit of horse trading, and so on and so forth. But Cabinet, in this case, plays a role in approving budget. But, the minister ultimately has to go to Parliament.
Yeah.
So it would be short-sighted for the ANC, especially if the DA says that they are not going to vote for this framework on the basis that you are proceeding with policies that have nothing to do with the budget. But in any event, that have nothing to do with that. But also, it would be stupid of them, I would assume, for not to engage anyone who would be voting for the framework. Now, Action SA brought workable proposals, and that's what I think was agreed upon, and that's why it was passed.
Well, I mean, you're right, and you are quite right. It's rather silly if they're not engaging anybody else. Can you actually believe that they're not engaging anybody else? I would find it quite puzzling if that were the case, isn't it? But thanks for that, and let's see what happens. I mean, there's so much developing in the next few days, or few hours maybe. Fingers on the pulse. Appreciate your call, Maxwell in Polokwane. Right, let's get to some of the voice notes that we've had. All right, I'll get to that now.
Good afternoon, and your listeners. I just got one comment. I'm anonymous from Beggarsford. My comment is, if any of the listeners or any South African can tell us about one thing just one thing that the ANC government has done and they are excelling on it. Just one thing. What is it? Because I can't recall of any. Thank you.
All right. I'm going to leave that to the audience to participate on. If not today, then tomorrow.
Good afternoon, yeah. Unfortunately, Mark from Cape Town. Sometimes we need to be fair on these discussions. The DA's position on this budget was ridiculous because they are not supporting anything that is within the context of the budget speech. You cannot be held ransom with the budget discussion, but you are pulling in to say, if I vote on this, this is what I get. It's absurd. Whatever alternative they had, they did not table them correctly. Finish and clear.
Okay, so that's another one. Interesting one. Let's get to another around law enforcement.
When it comes to corruption, I think that in as much as we can blame, we can say people are doing a whole lot of crime, jobs, this and that. But then law enforcement, we have a problem of law enforcement. If the law enforcement structure was good, we wouldn't have this problem. But then we have a problem of law enforcement in this country. The politicians are stealing, they are corrupt. The police themselves, they are stealing. Even the Banyasas are wanting the ring in the road. Like everyone, the Banyasas don't have 2 weeks.
Okay, and by the way, don't miss out. Now, I'm not a gambler, but you may well be if you want to take a chance. The Powerball jackpot is estimated at a staggering 110 million rands today. So you heard that, 110 million rands. Play Powerball now for your chance at an estimated 110 million rand jackpot. You could become Mzansi's next big winner. Get your tickets now in store on the nationallottery.co.za, the mobile app, cell phone banking, or simply dial *120 *7529 hash. You got that? For USSD Panda Pusha Play. Players must be 18 years older. Play responsibly. Ichuba is the proud operator of the National Lottery.
X at SAFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
Right, here's another comment about the DA.
Good afternoon. Tsapo here. No, I think the DA is a bit misleading to us because other GNU partners has indicated that the DA only spoke to ANC. So they might have not gone outside the GNU, but they only spoke to only one party in the GNU, which is the ANC, because frankly, I believe that they believe that they are in a partnership with the ANC, and all other parties that are in the GNU matters less.
Okay, I'll just reserve that comment because I want to get more thoughts from you. Here's another one that's really interesting.
The spokesperson there, that banks and business are not running ahead of themselves. They do what is called planning, which the ANC seems to be incapable of doing. They're not running ahead of themselves. They know that this thing is inevitable, but the ANC is always trying to play mind games with the public, including business. Business does not operate like that. Thanks, Ashraf. Thabo, Midrand.
Thanks for that, Thabo. Well, I'll tell you what, that relates to the conversation I had with the ANC's national spokesperson much earlier on in the show. I think very, very early. Listen to the podcast, by the way. Listen to all the podcasts of the conversations we've had throughout the day. Just go safm.co.za, then the National Pulse, and you'll podcast, and the National Pulse will find them all.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. I'm very surprised that EFF and MK Party together they vote with the DA against the ANC rule. So for me, it's clear indication that there is an element of hypocrisy. Because Malema is always criticizing DA and its policy. So now it's raised a big question that how he vote with them against the ANC, because they're saying that their policies, them and the ANC are the same. And also MK Party, they said they got nothing to do with the DA, but they are the one who voting for them. So now, do you understand that there is no truth in this South Africa? Thanks, Nkosinathi Mbanjo from Mkambatini, Maritzburg.
Well, I mean, to be fair, they're not voting with the DA as in their partners or chommies. No, they are effectively voting against the increase of VAT, right? So here's another one. We have Jafta Masemola Road in Khayelitsha and Steve Biko Road in Gugulethu and Imam Haroon Road in Cape Town. Those are heroes. I certainly know of all of them. So there we are. That's at least one thing to start with. I think that's about the show. We've got, pity we couldn't use many of the others. Someone asking what's the use of deputy ministers. I think it's a big issue. They are largely anonymous. Am I right? Think about that. We'll talk about that tomorrow. And perhaps that question tomorrow is, what is it that needs to happen to make a fix regarding the running of the country? I won't even say GNU, just government. Think about that. This is the National Pulse. Thanks for listening. We'll do it all again tomorrow. Right now, in the hot seat is the newsman, Greg Hose.
Thank you, Ashraf. In this news update, Mbulula says the DA is replaceable in the GNU and technology is key in modern policing. Good evening. The ANC Secretary-General Fikile Mbalula says the DA will be replaced if it decides to leave the GNU. Tensions between the two parties have reached an all-time high